Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto was a Saiyan. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. A blonde-haired boy of 10 years of age was sitting in a very rundown apartment room, his face furrowed in a scowl as he stared at what he now knew to be a seal on his stomach. He had first discovered this mark when he was 5, and had been bathing in a spring. Since then he had been determined to find out what the thing was and had used every skill known to him to find out what it was. 2 days ago he had finally managed to figure out that on his stomach was a seal, and he had found this out thanks to a brown-haired girl known as Ten who had shown him her weapon scroll that she used to seal her kunai and other things away. So now that he knew what it was, he just had to figure out what it was for. He had quickly figured out that whatever this seal was holding back was most likely very powerful and possibly alive. The boy had actually used his stealth skills to pilfer a few scrolls and books about sealing. He had been studying said scrolls and books for the past 2 days, and sealing came natural to him. He simply understood and recreated every seal he came across, even the more complex ones in the book, but he just couldn't make heads or tails of the one on his stomach. Groaning, he was about to put his shirt back down when suddenly he remembered something one of the fangirls in his class said. She had said something about meditating to help with her family's skills and that everyone had a mindscape even if they didn't believe they did. The boy quickly realized that if this seal was part of him, then maybe he could meditate to figure out what it was. Smiling to himself, he sat down to meditate and slowed his breathing. Before long he found himself in his mindscape, and he scowled as this place was a literal dump. His mindscape was a sewer, and a dark and smelly one at that. He, standing up, started to move around looking for any sign of the seal. He blinked when he came across 2 sets of pipes. The first pair were light blue like how chakra was supposed to be, while the other pair was blood red, and he could literally feel the heat and malice in these pipes. He, wondering what the second set of pipes were, started to follow them and soon found himself in a rather large room. Most of this room was blocked off by golden bars that made up a cage the height of the room. The boy, looking at the cage, blinked and wondered where it came from, but his eyes suddenly caught sight of the thing he had been searching for. It was the seal. Cheering slightly, the boy turned to the cage and tried to peer into it. He couldn't see anything. He, moving closer, still couldn't make out anything in the cage. He, actually touching the golden bars now, was now looking directly in the cage. He could now make out a very large shape in the cage. He was wondering what this shape was until 2 very large eyes opened up. The boy froze in fear, spotting the huge slitted blood-red eyes. A mouth full of teeth then appeared, and a deep demonic voice said, "So my jailer finally comes to visit little me." The boy, hearing the word jailer, was confused until suddenly light filled the room. The boy stumbled back in fear, spotting the Kyuubi no Kitsune in all of its glory. Kyuubi, laughing maliciously, said, "Yes, fear me mortal, I am the great and powerful Kyuubi." The boy, now backed up to the wall, was staring at the fox with wide shock-filled eyes. Suddenly everything started to click: why he was glared at, why he was overcharged, why everyone hated him, even why the Hokage was so nice to him. It was because he was Jinchuriki to the monster that had attacked the village 11 years ago and had killed so many people. This hurt the boy deeply as he realized that he was nothing but a weapon for the village, and all those times he would be chased down by the villagers and stuff had most likely been to beat him into submission. This made the boy do something he hadn't done since he was abandoned by his mother at 3. He cried his big blue eyes out, letting out tears of pure agony. Inside of the cage, Kyuubi, who would normally relish in the agony of others, was actually looking at the boy with pity and respect. It really wished there was something it could do to help the kid, but the only card it had was to offer the rest of itself to the Shinigami, and that wouldn't help the kid at all. It, moving its red eyes to the seal, glared with hate at it, as this was all that damn Yondaime Hokage's fault. Wait, it was also that mysterious masked Uchiha's fault. Yeah, it was both of their fault that this kid was suffering so much, and if the Kyuubi ever got its claws on those fuckers, well, things wouldn't end well for them. Suddenly it noticed something about the seal it hadn't before. It, standing up and shifting into its human form, moved to the seal and looked it over. Its eyes widened as this seal was done by a Shinigami, not the Shinigami. This means that its old friend Shinigami hadn't forsaken their friendship to seal it away. Gaining a smirk that would make even Orochimaru nervous, it turned to the boy and said, "Oi kid, stop the crying. I'm about to make a deal with death." The boy looking up at it, gained wide eyes spotting a woman with long flowing red hair, pale skin and a body that would make men and women alike drool. Kyuubi ignoring the shock on the boy's face tapped the seal and said, "Oi Kira-chan, wake the fuck up. I got a proposition for you." She stepping back smirked knowing that her message had gotten through. Sure enough, seconds later a heavy pressure appeared in the mindscape, nearly making the boy pass out. When the pressure vanished, a woman appeared dressed in a dark purple kimono. This woman was taller than any the boy had ever seen before. She stood at 7 feet tall easily. Her skin was snow white and had no blemishes that the boy could see. Her hair was silver and spiked out everywhere. Both of her eyes were golden and shined with curiosity. From her forehead 2 thick pair of ivory horns could be seen. Sitting in her mouth was a rather large dagger and around her neck was a necklace of red prayer beads. This woman sitting down on the floor of the mindscape looked at Kyuubi and asked, "What is this proposition you speak of, Akane?" Akane smiling said, "It's nice to see you after so long too, Kira. Before I tell you about my offer, take a look at the kid's memories and life so far." Kira turning to look at the wide-eyed boy waved her hand and was soon viewing his memories. Akane could only smirk, feeling the palpable rage rolling off of Kira like waves. Kira turning to Akane asked, "What is this proposition, Akane?" Akane looking with soft eyes at the boy said, "Simple really, I give you the rest of my life force and you take control over all of my life force instead of the Shinigami who sealed me, and you make the kid's life at least 10 times better." Kira hearing this offer turned to look at the still in shock boy. She walking over to him squatted to his level and asked, "What is your name, little one?" The boy going from shocked to afraid for his life stuttered out, Naruto Uzumaki." Kira hearing this smiled softly at him and asked, "How would like a new mother?" Naruto hearing this gained wide eyes and asked, "Someone wants to adopt me?" Kira giggling said, "You misunderstand me, Naruto." Naruto hearing this looked sad and asked, "So no one wants to adopt me?" Kira stopping her giggling said, "Let me explain, little one. No, you will no be adopted, but instead you will literally become the offspring of your new mother and have only her DNA and blood running through you." Naruto hearing this gained his excited look back and asked, "Who is my new mother going to be?" Kira smiling softly turned to look at the waiting Akane and said, "Your offer has been accepted, Akane Yoko. Today you leave this world and I gain control over your life force. Embrace eternity." Akane hearing this closed her eyes and let all of her hatred go, as she faded away. Kira taking a deep breath and turned to the confused Naruto. She lifting one of her fingers up touched him where the seal was on the outside and said, "I Kira Shinjin, the true goddess of death, mother of all Shinigami, only living user of the Shi number 13 Senman Bunya, 13 disciplines of death, inventor of the Soul Slayer, and source of the death release Urbi make you Naruto Uzumaki my son and heir of the Shinjin clan. With the energy gained from Akane Yoko, known to the mortals as Kyuubi, and the favor my sister Kami owes me, I Urbi transform you from a mere mortal to a full-blooded Saiyan and a full-blooded Shinigami." Naruto hearing this gained wide eyes and blinked, feeling something burst from his backside. He turning his head gained wide eyes spotting a long thick black monkey tail. He turning back could see the bright smile on Kira's face. She kissing him in the middle of the forehead said, "Welcome to the family, my new little maelstrom. No longer will you live in the ratty apartment you are currently in, no longer will you have to put up with the utter bullshit of this village, no longer will you be weak, no longer will you cry out to no one, no longer will any limitations be thrust onto your shoulders. For you are Shinjin and we are the strong." Naruto hearing this couldn't help but feel the warmth and comfort flowing from her words and the kiss. He with a burning fire in his eyes said, "I promise to never disappoint you, Okawa-sama. I promise to be the best there is and to make the Shinjin name feared and respected in the mortal world. I promise to become the strongest Saiyan that ever lived, and I promise to be so legendary that when my enemies meet you they'll realize that only legends create legends." She hearing this giggled and said, "I know you will, baby, and nothing you do will ever disappoint me. I will always be proud of you and will always love you. Now when you wake up, get out of the apartment you're in and travel to Training Ground 43. I have already signed the papers to make you the owner of said training ground along with Training Ground 42, 41, and 40. 43 will have a palace I had some of your cousins create waiting for you. This palace is as tall as the Hokage Tower, but could easily take up half of the red light district. In this palace you will find everything you could ever need, including a very special training room called the hyperbolic time chamber. I have to go talk to your aunt now. Remember baby, you are Shinjin. She then vanished and Naruto's mindscape quickly changed until it resembled a moonlit valley. In said valley the intimidating statue of a large roaring ape could be seen, its monkey-like tail wrapped tightly around a boulder making it look even more terrifying. Naruto looking at the ape wondered what it was for, but felt himself fading from his mindscape. He clenching his fist said, I am Naruto Shinjin and I am strong. He then vanished from his mindscape. Naruto waking up on the outside, smiled feeling his new tail swaying behind him. He getting up walked into his former shitty bathroom and gained huge eyes spotting himself in the mirror. His blonde hair was no longer short and spiky, or blonde for that matter. His hair was now shoulder length, silky smooth and black like his tail. The whiskers marks that had been on his face were also gone, leaving his cheeks blemish-free. He then noticed the small horns growing out of the middle of his forehead. He smiled at this as he had horns like his new mom. He was kind of sad that his eyes weren't gold like hers, but he was okay with that as he had horns like her. He then, remembering what she had told him to do, shook his head and walked out of the bathroom. He turning to look at the stuff he had pilfered, bent over and grabbed it all, as he liked seals and could see the potential of them. He then, slipping his black shirt on, was about to put on his orange and blue jacket when he thought about it. He didn't really like that jacket as it was too bright and he had only gotten it to keep him warm during the colder months. Hell, he had wanted the one with the fur lining, but the jerk of a shop owner had jacked the price of that on up to a ridiculous number and it would have cost Naruto an arm and a leg. Snorting, he turned around and walked out of the apartment complex and started to head directly for the training grounds. He passing by them, counted the numbers he saw on them until he got to 40. He looking into this training ground smiled, spotting the rather peaceful nature of it and the river the place had. Nodding, he moved to training ground 41. He looking in this one liked this one also, because it was very secluded and if his eyes weren't fooling him a pond connected to the river in 40 could be seen. This meant a possible fresh source of fish for him. Nodding, he moved to training ground 42 and blinked, spotting a pack of wolves eating a rather fat deer. He memorizing this moved to his final plot of land. He arriving at training ground 43 blinked, finding a brick fence and a large iron gate. He looking at said gate could see the kanji for Shinjin shining brightly on it. Smiling, he placed his hand on the gate and blinked when the entire fence pulsed a few times. The gate then opened. Shrugging, he walked inside of the gate and gasped, spotting the absolutely gorgeous home that now belonged to him. It looked like one of those castles the Hokage used to read to him about, but more modern. The kanji for Shinjin could be seen shining proudly on the massive statues of apes in the front. He walking inside of his new home couldn't believe that this huge place belonged to him now. He shaking his hand smiled and decided to explore his new home and find the room he was going to claim as his. 2 hours later and Naruto had thoroughly explored his new home and picked his new room. It was the largest bedroom in the entire place and was connected to a bathroom that had a walk-in shower and a jacuzzi. He had, after putting away the scrolls and books he had stole, went into the kitchen and opened up the fridge. He was very happy to find it fully stocked with all kinds of food. He had closed it and checked the freezer. He had found all kinds of meat in there and had even found seals to keep them fresh on the packaging. He then checked the cabinets, counters and even the 2 closets to find that he had a lot of cooking utensils to fix himself something to eat with. He then fixed himself a small dinner of fried fish and fries. He then headed back to his room to actually get some sleep, because he was still tired and didn't want to do anything until he was fully rested. He climbing into his new bed, he pulled the cover over his head and turned off the light. He was then sleeping peacefully. What he didn't know was that it was a new day, as he had been meditating for a long time and had finished the night with his exploring of his new home. Right now at his old apartment a few Anbu could be seen standing, along with one Iruka Amino. One Anbu picking up the orange jacket Naruto had left behind said, "There seems to be no trace of him, Amino-san. His jacket is the only thing here." Iruka sighing said, "Alright, I'll just wait for him at the academy. Hopefully he shows up before lunch." He then went back to the academy. The Anbu, a woman with long wavy purple hair, said, "You 3 report back to Hokage-sama. I'll continue to look for clues of his whereabouts." The other three Anbu nodding vanished in the customary leaf shushin. Once they were gone, she stood up and started to search the apartment for any signs of Naruto besides his jacket. After 45 minutes she had still not found anything. Sighing, she looked at the jacket in her hand. She, sending a small pulse of chakra to make sure no one was coming, removed her mask and brought the jacket to her face. She, nuzzling it, said, "I hope you're okay, Naruto-kun, and no one has harmed you, or so help me Kami, I'll kill the person responsible myself, even if it's my former sensei and her clan." She then, stopping her nuzzling, slid her mask back on and vanished in a swirl of leaves. That night Naruto woke up and yawned, feeling refreshed and energized. Hopping out of his bed, he wondered what he should do. He then remembered that he was rather lacking in intelligence and all his classmates picked on him for that. So with this in mind, he made his way to his new library. Once inside of said place, he grabbed the first book he could find. It was named The Different Types of Energies and How to Use Them. Book 1, for Beginners. He, sitting down in the comfy chair, started to read the book. Before long he had read half of the library and was already on the 5th book on the different types of energies. He had also read several cookbooks, a few general education books and a book about creating jutsu. He, stopping his reading, put down his book and said, "Okay, I've trained my brain enough for the day. It's time to train my body." He, jumping down from his chair, walked out of the library and made his way to the hyperbolic time chamber. He, getting just outside the door, moved the face of the dragon and found the settings. Making a thinking face and remembering what he had read in the instruction manual for the chamber, he said, "Let's see, I trained my brain for about 7 hours, so I need to train my body for at least 7 hours. Keeping in line with the mechanics of the chamber, 7 hours in there is like 14 hours in there. So logically I need to set the chamber doors to open in 4 hours so I can get exactly 7 hours of training." Nodding to himself, he set up the time and smiled when the dragon head glowed, accepting his input time. The door then opened and Naruto walked into the chamber. He, feeling the door shut and vanish, cracked his knuckles and said, "Alright, time for some serious training. First up, let's try out that clone jutsu I saw that man reading that orange book do." He, crossing his fingers, called out, "Shadow Clone Jutsu." A huge poof of smoke occurred and Naruto had to wave the smoke away. When it cleared, Naruto nearly had an heart attack, spotting a literal sea of Naruto. Shaking his head, he smiled and said, "Oh yeah, I did it in one try." He, calming down, said, "Now let's start working on the different energies we read about. Split up and take one of the 9. Also some of you see if you can work on getting rid of the physical weakness grabbing our tail brings." The clones, nodding, said, "You got it, boss." Soon the chamber was filled with training Narutos. The original Naruto was actually doing push-ups and sit-ups. He was doing this to increase his physique. He didn't want to be scrawny and weak anymore. No, he wanted to be a powerhouse that would make enemies shit their pants just at the mention of his name. He also wanted to be the strongest he could be so that he could take on whatever life throws at him. Plus, showing up Sasuke Teme didn't sound like a bad idea. He would continue this way of training for a week, making many people start to worry about him, as he had vanished from the view of the village. Hell, some civilians were actually refusing to come outside in such a state of paranoia, expecting for him to pull off some prank that would make anything he's done before look like jokes. It was actually morning time and Naruto, getting out of his bed, yawned as today he was going back to the academy. Walking into his bathroom, he looked at himself in the mirror. He smiled, spotting the muscles he now had and that his ribs were no longer showing. Actually lifting up his left arm to the mirror, he slightly flexed it and could see the rock his arm had. Nodding to himself, he walked into his shower and took a nice hot shower. Once done with his shower, he walked over to the sink and started to brush his teeth. Once done with that, he brushed and combed his hair, because his hair would always try to curl up after a shower, so brushing and combing it was absolutely necessary. He also brushed his tail, as he didn't feel like dealing with a puffy tail today. He, walking out of the bathroom, walked over to his dresser and grabbed a pair of black underwear. He, slipping these on, tossed the towel he wrapped around his lower body into the hamper. He then, walking over to his closet, opened the doors and wondered what he should wear today. Apparently while he was sleeping the first night, his mother had a whole lot of clothes delivered to his home and placed in his closet. He even had varying sets of the Saiyan armor in his closet. The clothes that he had been training in was a basic pair of black pants, with weight and gravity seals on them, along with a pair of black wristbands with the same seals on them. Truthfully, all of his clothes had those seals on them and all had the same level he was used to wearing activated on them. He, scratching the back of his head, said, "I think I'll go classic." He was about to grab a pair of dark orange pants, when he spotted the Saiyan warrior armor worn by Bardock. He, smiling, changed his mind and grabbed the top part of that along with the armguards. He then sliding on a pair of long black pants, then slipped on the leg guards, and finally after putting on a pair of red socks slipped on the black boots. He, looking himself in the mirror, liked the way he looked, but felt like he was missing something. He suddenly remembered what he was missing. He, walking over to his dresser, opened the top drawer. Reaching inside, he pulled out a pair of shades. These weren't regular shades, as they had been outfitted with the technology from the Saiyan Scouters. This would not only give him a cool look, but would allow him to get an accurate read on people's power levels. Not to mention he'd be able to see people coming with ease. The beauty of the shades is that unlike the original Scouter, that instead of blowing up or breaking from sudden power-ups, it would instead download the next upgrade and adjust. Plus they only worked for him, as if someone else were to put them on they would act just like normal shades. His new look complete with his tail swaying behind him, he grabbed his book on the history of the Saiyan race, walked out of his home for the first time in days, and walked out of his compound. He knew that the gate had closed behind him and that his home had literally vanished from view. He, putting one of his hands in his pockets, said, "Goku and Vegeta, two of the strongest Saiyans to ever live and the only known Saiyans to ever reach Super Saiyan 4 and Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan." Naruto, smirking behind his book, said, "I will surpass you too and become the new legend among the Saiyan race. After all, I am the new Prince of Saiyans." He then continued his walk to the academy. At the academy in classroom 300, Iruka had just walked in and sighed as once again the fan club of Sasuke Uchiha was having a heated argument over who got to sit beside the brooding boy. Iruka, scanning the room, was very worried because Naruto still hadn't returned to class yet, and this was bad. Shaking his head, he was about to shout at Sasuke's fan club to sit down when the classroom door slid open. All eyes moved to the door, and all eyes widened, spotting the changed Naruto walking into the room. Iruka, shaking his head, asked, "Excuse me, but are you lost?" Naruto, blinking behind his book, lowered it and looked Iruka dead in the eyes. Everyone, including the spying Sarutobi, gasped, spotting the signature blue eyes of Naruto staring at them. Naruto, scratching the back of his head, said, "Sorry I'm late. You see, I was on my way here when I came across this talking squirrel. It wasn't really a squirrel at all but a princess that had been transformed by an evil old hag of a witch. She begged me to save her kingdom from the fierce dragon the witch had control over. I, being the gentleman that I am, accept her plea and rushed to her kingdom. When I got there I found out that the dragon had like 5 heads and could spit out poison. So I grabbed a sword and started to hack at the thing, until it stopped moving. The old witch then appeared and tried to turn me into a squirrel, but I, thinking quickly on my feet, used a mirror to send it back at her. She was turned into a squirrel and the princess returned to her real form. She thanked me for saving her kingdom and releasing the spell by declaring me a knight, and gave me this really cool horse I named Quicksilver. Anyway, I, riding Quicksilver here, sent him back home and walked into the academy." Every single male who had just heard his excuse, including the recently returned from a mission Kakashi, all either sweat dropped or, in Kakashi's case, nodded sagely. The females, on the other hand, all swooned hearing this story and wished they were a princess he could save. Iruka, shaking his head, asked, "Where have you been for the past week, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Well, you see, I was sleeping in my apartment, wait, excuse me, former apartment, when this maniac dressed as a fox burst into my room through the window. This woke me up and I was all too ready to kick her ass, but she quickly hid under my bed and begged me not to let it get her." Curious, I asked the woman what she was talking about, and she said that a man in a white robe with blonde hair was trying to trap her in a small prison for the rest of her life. So I asked the woman why was the man in white trying to do this. The woman told me that she had been in 2 prisons before and had been treated like shit by the wardens. So when she was released from the second prison she was all too ready to leave, when this other lunatic shows up and places her under his spell and forces her to attack the former prison and try to kill the warden. The man in white then came into the picture and with the use of a forbidden fork tried to force her into this new small prison. Once hearing her story I felt bad for the woman and told her that I'd protect her no matter what. Who then shows up? Why, none other than the man in white, who then told me he was my bloody father and that the woman was really a demon in disguise trying to trick me so that she could kill me and rule the world. As you can imagine, I was all kinds of confused when a new player enters the picture. This player is a woman that shall be known as Shinjin. Anyway, she comes into my room and takes the first woman away, claiming that only she could remove demons. She also took away the man in white, leaving just the two of us. She then, spotting me, gave me a kiss on my forehead and made me her biological son and gave me this awesome new home, along with the tail swaying behind me. She then gave me directions to my new home and vanished to go talk to her sister. Anyway, I decided to get some sleep, traveled to the location of my new home and have been there since then. By the way, the maniac was named Kyubi and the man in white was named Arashi. All eyes were wide hearing this, while Sarutobi and Kakashi were so white paper would be jealous and asking for tips. Naruto, ignoring the shock in the room, walked to the seat beside Shino and sat down. Iruka, shaking his head clear of the shock, turned to look at Naruto and started at him for a few minutes. Iruka, then coughing, began the class. An hour later and the class was outside for sparring. Iruka now had his assistant for this part, one Mizuki. Naruto could tell that this man was up to no good and was most likely a hater. Iruka said, "Alright class, today we're going to do something special. We're going to let you guys pick your opponent." All the class hearing this started whispering excitedly. Except for Naruto, who had a feeling he was going to be putting an Uchiha in its place real soon. Sure enough, when Iruka asked who would like to go first, Sasuke said, "I'm going first and I challenge the Dobi." Naruto, sighing, stood up and said, "I accept, just don't whine when I kick you ass." He, ignoring the screeching of Sasuke's fan club, walked into the middle of the ring and starting to think about what fighting style he wanted to use. Sasuke, already in his stance, smirked, thinking that the Dobi was so scared he couldn't even get in a proper stance. Mizuki, being between the two, smirked and said, "Ready, go." Sasuke then dashed towards Naruto, who still hadn't moved. His eyes then shifted, feeling Sasuke getting close. Naruto, watching as Sasuke moved towards him in slow motion, stepped to the left and decided to slap Sasuke with his tail like Raditz had done to Krillin. Sasuke or anyone else never even saw Naruto move, but the next thing anyone knew, Sasuke was sailing through several trees. Naruto, spotting this, blinked and looked at his tail, wondering if it was really that strong or if Sasuke was really that weak. Sasuke, getting up and shaking the cobwebs out of his head, made his way back to the ring with wobbly legs. He, getting to the ring, glared at Naruto and said, "That was a lucky shot, Dobi. This time I'll use my full speed." He then dashed towards Naruto as his full speed. Naruto sighed as Sasuke was still moving as slow as a snail. Shaking his head, he figured out what style he was going to use on the Uchiha. When Sasuke was an inch away from Naruto, he blurred behind the last Uchiha and slammed his elbow into the boy's back. This forced Sasuke to stumble forward. Sasuke, turning around, was met with a teeth-rattling punch to his face, which was quickly followed with a decompressing kick to the stomach that forced Sasuke to his knees and puke up his breakfast. Naruto, spotting Sasuke on his knees, wound up and kicked into the air, spinning at a very high rate, creating a vacuum of wind that sucked Sasuke in. Once Sasuke was inside of the whirlwind, Naruto cried out, "Taijutsu! Tatsumaki Senpukyaku!" Everyone gained wide eyes when Naruto repeatedly kicked Sasuke with this whirlwind of kicks. When the attack ended, Sasuke crash-landed directly in front of his fan club. Naruto, landing, crossed his arms over his chest and said, "Arrogance is your Achilles heel, Sasuke. Get rid of you arrogance and realize that revenge is not what should drive you to get stronger." He then, turning around, put his hands on the back of his head and walked out of the ring. Just after the shell-shocked Iruka declared him the winner of the match. It was now after school and Naruto was once again reading his book as he made his way to his favorite ramen stand. He was almost there when he was suddenly surrounded. He, looking up from his book, rolled his eyes, spotting Sasuke's fan club, all with their parents glaring at him. Wait, scratch that, Ino Yamanaka was not there, but the others were. He, putting his book away, asked in a bored voice, "Can I help you?" Sakura, stepping forward, said, "Baka, I don't know how you did it, but you cheated." Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, "Go away, you're annoying." Sakura, hearing, got pissed and took a swing at Naruto, who not only caught her punch but tossed her at her parents. He, gaining a cold look in his eyes, said, This is your one and only warning. I will not put up with the shit I did before, and if you try me I will end you. One of the parents snorting charged at Naruto with a rusty kunai in his hand. Naruto, closing his eyes, literally vanished, and the next thing anyone knew, the bodies of the people around him started dropping like flies. Naruto, appearing back in his spot, looked at the only people still standing, which was the Haruno family, and said, "Begone, pest." All three members of the Haruno family took off running, shit staining their pants. Naruto, looking at the still alive bodies of the people around him, said, "Foolish." He then continued on his way to the ramen stand, once again reading his book. He was now at Ichiraku Ramen and was eating bowl after bowl of ramen, but was doing so without moving his book. This had Ayame and Tuchi gaping, as what Naruto was doing was damn near reminiscent of what Kakashi Hatake did. Naruto, shifting his eyes to the left, asked, "Can I help you, Anbu-san?" The cat-masked Anbu from before appearing asked, "Hokage-sama and the council wishes to speak with you." Naruto, hearing this, shut his book and placed a large amount of money on the table. He, getting out of his seat and ignoring Tuchi having dollar signs for eyes, said, "I see." Yugo, spotting Naruto's face, was very glad she had a mask on, because damn if Naruto wasn't looking very Y for a 10-year-old right now. She, placing a hand on his shoulder, vanished in the classic leaf shushin. Naruto was now sitting in one of his least favorite things of all time. That's right, he was sitting in a council meeting. He was ignoring the constant glaring of the civilian council, the questioning looks of the shinobi council, and the impassive looks of the elder council. His was leaning on his left hand, looking at the room with boredom shining clearly in his eyes, and the lazy swaying of his tail conveyed that he was actually bored. He had been here for 30 minutes, yet no one had said a thing yet, as everyone seemed content with either staring or glaring at him. He, looking Hiruzen dead in the eyes, asked in a bored voice, "Are we going to sit here staring at me all day, or is there a point to this meeting?" Sarutobi, blinking, coughed and said, "Yes, there is a point to this meeting." One civilian, standing up with a sneer on his face, said, "Hokage-sama, this demon attacked and put several citizens in the hospital." Naruto, looking at the man, said, "Actually, I only shut off the chakra flowing through their bodies and flooded their chakra pathways with ki. They'll never be able to make it as Genin now, and those foolish enough to try will die the first time they use a jutsu. Also, I'm not a demon, as the Kyuubi no Kitsune no longer resides in me, thank you very much." All eyes in the room turned into circles hearing this, and Hiyashi Hyuga asked, "How do you know about your prisoner?" Naruto, cutting his bored eyes to the man, said, "I'm much smarter than you people think. I saw the seal on my stomach one day while cleaning myself in a river and set out to find out what it was. Thanks in part to 11010 Higurashi and Ino Yamanaka I found out. 1010 showed me her weapon scroll allowing me to identify it as a seal, and I remembered Ino talking about meditation being a big part of her family's jutsu." All eyes were wide hearing this, and Hiruzen asked, "What do you mean the Kyuubi no longer resides inside of you?" Naruto, standing up and taking his top off, revealed his bare upper body and channeled chakra through his body. No seal appeared, shocking everyone. He, putting his gear back on, said, "Exactly as I said, the Kyuubi no Kitsune no longer resides inside of me. She was removed by higher power. I believe you heard the story I told Iruka earlier, Hokage-sama. That was almost how it happened, except I kicked Minato Namikaze in the balls for sealing a giant ball of hate-filled fur into my stomach and then sent his sorry ass to the afterlife." All eyes were completely wide hearing this, and some people were having heart attacks. Sarutobi, trembling, asked, "Who is Shinjin?" Naruto, closing his eyes, said, "It's a last name, my new last name to be exact, and also my new clan." One of the civilians, standing up, asked, "Who is Shinjin demon?" Naruto, keeping his eyes closed, said, "For the last time, I am not a demon, a Shinigami maybe, a Saiyan definitely, but not a demon. To answer the question, well, Shinjin is again a last name, my new last name, a clan. This clan is as ancient as time itself. Both senior members are as old as time itself, but saying that to their face would most likely end in a painful death." Everyone hearing this started to blink and think about all of the clans they had ever heard about, trying to see if they had ever encountered the name Shinjin before. Suddenly Sarutobi remembered his sensei Hashirama telling him a story about Kami and Shinigami. How they were life and death itself, and how they were as old as time itself. How they were sisters and loved each other dearly, and how they were two members of the eldest clan in history, dating way before the Sage of Six Paths. He quickly tried to remember the name of said clan. Sume Inuzuka suddenly snapped her fingers and all eyes moved to her. She said, I remember where I heard that name before. My team once fought a Shinjin before. She defeated all three of us with her eyes closed and spared our lives, stating something about remembering the clan name Shinjin and that Ka-sama was calling her. We passed out and when woke up she was gone, and the place we were at was covered in white feathers and snow. Naruto hearing this cracked open his left eye and said, your team came across my cousin Michelle. You're really lucky she was called back by my aunt or you'd be dead. All eyes widened hearing this, and Sarutobi suddenly remembered more of the story. Cammy apparently had 4 daughters. Michelle, Gabriella, Rachel, and Lucifer. All 4 girls were the angels of Cammy and considered omens. Cammy was named Akiko Shinjin while Shinigami was named Akira Shinjin, but Cammy was supposed to go by Aki and Shinigami went by Kira. Sarutobi suddenly blanched as one of these 2 beings had declared Naruto as their child, which meant big trouble for Jiraiya's plans. Everyone besides Naruto noticing how white Sarutobi suddenly became asked, what's wrong Hokage-sama? Sarutobi with fear clear in his eyes asked, which one? Naruto slowly opening his eyes smirked and said, fear me for I am become death. Sarutobi shit 3 bricks hearing Naruto say this, as this meant that Naruto had been transformed into the child of Kira Shinjin and was now literally the son of death. Naruto spotting the pure fear in Sarutobi's face said, I'll allow you to inform the rest of the people in the room of what you have learned as I have date with a special training room. He then stood up and to the shock of everyone in the room vanished in a whisper of wind. All eyes moved to the still trembling Sarutobi who slowly informed the council of what he had discovered. People in the room instantly started to faint learning that Naruto was the son of the goddess of death. Naruto appearing in his home didn't actually go to the chamber because he could feel 5 energy signatures he didn't recognize and the energy signature of his mom in his home. Instead he laid out on his couch and stared up at his ceiling. He didn't even blink when he was literally floated into the air and Kira took a seat. He was then floated down and his head was placed in her lap. He shifting his eyes could see that who he assumed to be Rachel, Michelle, Gabriella and Lucifer. Aki was still looking around the kitchen. Naruto then shifting his eyes to stare his mother in the eyes asked, is this a family meeting? She smiling down at him started to run her fingers through his head as she said, why yes my little prince of all Saiyans. Your aunt and cousins decided that they wanted to meet you. Naruto nodding allowed his tail to unwrap from around his waist and shut his eyes. He yawning said, I'm sleepy Okawa-chan. I think I'll take a nap until Aunt Aki is done exploring. Kira hearing this smiled even brighter and said, good night my precious maelstrom. Naruto was soon slumbering peacefully with his head in Kira's lap. 2 years later and Naruto was now 12. His black hair was the same as it had been since he became a full-blooded Saiyan. His attitude was indifferent to everyone except Ayame, Tuchi and Sasuke, who he showed open hate towards. Apparently after the council had recovered from their shock, they had informed the village of who he was and how he had so bravely carried the Kyuubi for so long and that he had finally killed it and that was why he had been absent from the academy. They also told the village that he was Minato's son and that he was the heir to the Namikaze clan. People had instantly started to kiss his ass hearing this, trying to make amends for their horrible deeds. Naruto had promptly ignored all of this, as he didn't care if they hated him or worshipped him anymore. He was a motherfucking Shinjin and he was very proud of this. In fact this was the reason why he showed open hate towards Sasuke as the little prick had tried to demand that Naruto make him a member of his clan. Naruto had put the boy in the hospital for 6 weeks when he heard this and had been kicking Sasuke's ass brutally since then. Naruto was pretty sure he had broken Sasuke's arms at least 15 times each. Jiraiya had come to visit him and tried to make him realize that he was meant to be Konoha's ultimate defender. Naruto had told the man to stuff his ultimate defender where the sun don't shine as he wouldn't defend Konoha if he was paid. Ayame and Tuchi he would defend, everyone else could go rot in ditches for all he cared. This had pissed Jiraiya off, and the man had tried to attack Naruto. That didn't end well for the super pervert as Naruto gave him the worst beating of his life and then to add salt to the wound made damn sure the man would never be having again. Right now Naruto was getting ready for his last day at the academy. Today was the Genin exams, and Naruto was going to pass with ease. Apparently he had shot up from the class clown to the Rookie of the Year. Naruto didn't care about this frivolous title and only improved his grades so he could prove that he was the best. Naruto, sliding on a black shirt he had taken to wearing, slipped on his wristbands and was now completely ready for the academy. He, walking towards his door, whistled. This called his 12th birthday present from his cousin Michelle. Barreling into the room was a large black panther that he had named Ashley. This panther had started off as a small little panther kitten, but 2 years under Naruto's care and Ashley quickly became a monster of the night. He, smiling, said, "Come on Ashley, today is the day." Ashley, nodding, allowed him to slip her armor on her, as this armor was meant to help keep her safe, not that she needed the armor as she had trained with him in the chamber and could easily take down Jonin class threats. He, once she was dressed in her armor, slid his new sword over his shoulder. This was his late present from Gabriella. She had apologized for it being late, but she had to track it down. Apparently his new sword was a truly legendary sword. It had many different names, but the one he had stuck with was Excalibur, the Sword of Kings. It may have been his new sword, but training in the chamber with it for 2 days straight and using the Shadow Clone Jutsu had given him about 20,000 years of experience with it. He didn't slack up with his clones, and he now created at least 10,000 each time he created clones. He didn't really have to suffer the backlash from so many clones, as training with Rachel had fortified his mind, to the point that Naruto could be tortured for centuries but he would never give a single inch. If someone tried to actually break into his mind, they'd get trapped inside of the infinite maze he had created. 2 weeks ago he would have said that Genjutsu was the only thing that affected him, but his cousin Lucifer had taken care of this problem. There was a tattoo on his right hand of a very large slitted eye, but this tattoo was really his connection to the demon Argus who blocked all illusions from affecting him. Walking out of his home with Ashley walking proudly beside him, Naruto could see the villagers all looking at him with a little fear. He didn't blame them, as he walked beside Ashley, who he had personally seen cripple a few of the more persistent fools who bothered him. Shaking his head, he stopped and said, "Come on Ashley, let's take to the skies." Ashley, hearing this, roared and jumped into the air and started to lazily fly towards the academy. Naruto, chuckling, said, "Lazy panther, you were waiting for me to say that." He then, slowly floating into the air, started to fly behind his pet at a slower pace. At the academy, Iruka was looking at the classroom and realizing that many of these kids would be right back in their seats or worse soon. His eyes then moved to the ones who had the potential to make it. They were Sasuke Uchiha. Just as long as the boy stopped pissing Naruto off, Ino Yamanaka, who had become just as cold and indifferent as Naruto himself and was at the top of the class with said boy, Shikamaru Nara, who was a lazy but brilliant person. Kiba Inuzuka would make it if he got his arrogance under control. Choji Akamichi would stand beside Shikamaru. Shino Aburame was without a doubt going to make it. Hinata Hyuga would make it if she ever got rid of the inferiority complex she had. And Sakura Haruno, who would only make it if she got rid of her fangirl personality. He then, turning his head to the clock, knew that the one who was sure to make it was going to arrive at any moment. Sure enough, the door opened up and in walked none other than Naruto Shinjin, otherwise known as Lord Shinjin, and his pet panther, Ashley the Terrible. The villagers had started calling him Lord Shinjin when Naruto had refused the last name Namikaze and had reminded everyone that he was one of the 7 members of the Shinjin clan. In fact, he was the only male in the entire clan and was also the prince of all Saiyans. Naruto was at the top of the class, and ruled his spot with an iron grip. Naruto easily beat the shit out of anyone who challenged him for said spot, and wasn't afraid to break some bones to get a message across. This made Iruka remember the last beating Naruto had given Sasuke. Iruka shivered as Naruto had nearly shattered every bone in Sasuke's arm and had done so with his tail. In fact, Naruto rarely ever used his hands or feet anymore, as his tail was literally a deadly weapon, as Iruka had seen Naruto slap a group of Chunin threatening Ayame Ichiraku through buildings with a lazy swing of his tail. 6 of the 8 Chunin had died from overlaying concussion and several fragments of broken sternums lodging into their hearts or lungs. The 2 that had survived the slap had to retire from service due to the severity of the damage they suffered. One of them couldn't even leave the hospital from how bad he was injured, while the other one had to be pushed around in a wheelchair. Naruto hadn't even tried to apologize and had simply stated that he was protecting what was his and he would do so again. He then watching as Naruto took his seat beside Ino, coughed and said, "Alright class, today you take the Genin exams. Remember, give it your all and you'll never go wrong." He then turning nodded to Mizuki and the two men started the Genin exams. Later Naruto could be seen walking down the street, a brand new Konoha headband shining on his left arm. Naruto had easily passed the exam and had laughed at Mizuki's foolish attempt at trying to make him fail. After finishing the exams, Naruto had told Ashley to go hunt, as he could tell that she was hungry and he didn't feel like fixing her a 7-course meal. Naruto still didn't understand how Ashley could talk him into fixing her something to eat, when he barely ate himself. He had been shocked when he discovered this little fact, as according to the books he had read about Goku and the other Saiyans, he was supposed to have a monstrous appetite. Thankfully Rachel had been able to explain to him. Apparently because of him having so much of the death force flowing through him, his metabolism was much more efficient than the other Saiyans or anyone human for that matter. That wasn't to say that he didn't eat, it's just that when he did eat it was a little at a time. His mother had explained to him that he would grow out of this, when he achieved something known as Super Saiyan. Naruto had no doubts about this, as his mother had been right so far. He scowled remembering this as his mother had warned him about looking at the full moon without having full control over his body. Naruto hadn't listened and had transformed into a giant rampaging ape, and he nearly broke out of the barrier around the compound. Thankfully he had gained control over himself and managed to force the transformation back. Naruto absolutely hated this form, and wondered if he was the only one who hated it. Naruto suddenly stopping in front of the ramen stand, smirked as he could use some food. Walking inside he sat down in his chair and wondered how long it would take Ayame to spot him. It didn't take her long, as before long she was in front of him with such a cute smirk on her face. She batting her eyelashes at him asked, "What can I do for you, Naruto-kun?" He chuckling said, "I'll take 6 bowls of chicken ramen." He then feeling the energy signature approaching said, "Ashley will take the finest piece of meat you have." Ayame blinked wondering what he was talking about until Ashley walked in looking rather upset. Ayame understanding what Naruto had implied giggled and said, "Coming right up, Naruto-kun." Naruto turning to Ashley asked, "So no luck in catching that golden rabbit?" Ashley shaking her head yawned to reveal her rather deadly teeth. Naruto laughing loudly asked, "Am I supposed to be afraid?" Ashley growling snorted and turned to glare at something. Naruto still laughing said, "Silly panther, I am the prince of all Saiyans and I am afraid of nothing." Ashley snorted just as Ayame appeared carrying a rather thick slice of steak. She setting it down in front of Ashley patted the panther on the head and said, "Don't worry girl, you'll get that pesky rabbit next time." Ashley purring, leaned over and started to eat her steak. Naruto calming his laughter down said, "She's right Ashley, you're my pet and no tricky rabbit is going to escape your hungry maw." He smirked when Ashley snorted while eating her steak. A few hours later and Naruto was sitting in a tree in a clearing at night, listening to the frivolous conversation between Sasuke and Mizuki. Apparently the dumb ass Uchiha had stolen the forbidden scroll of sealing and was about to hand it over to Mizuki because apparently Mizuki had the power to defeat him. Naruto wanted to laugh out loud at this, but decided against it, but that didn't stop Ashley from laughing in her position beside him. Apparently she had found that statement hilarious, as Mizuki didn't even have the power to defeat Ashley and she was the laziest panther ever. Naruto shifted his eyes when Iruka appeared and tried to stop Sasuke from committing high treason, but the man was easily defeated by Mizuki, making Naruto raise his eyebrows slightly. Mizuki had then revealed himself to be working for the treacherous white snake Orochimaru, someone both Naruto's mother and aunt wanted dead. The man apparently had found a way to cheat death and extend his life. Naruto shifting his eyes to Ashley asked, "What do you think girl?" His response was for her to lick her lips. He chuckling said, "You know you really let your stomach control your actions." He then standing up jumped down alerting everyone in the clearing to his presence. Mizuki chuckling said, "Speak of the demon." Naruto hearing this quirked an eyebrow and asked, "Didn't you get the memo idiot?" "I'm not a demon?" Mizuki sneering said, "You are a demon, you stupid fox." Naruto rolling his eyes said, "Ashley retrieved the scroll from the idiot traitor." Mizuki was wondering what Naruto was talking about until he felt the scroll literally be taken from him. He gaining wide eyes turned and growled, spotting Ashley, who had the scroll under one of her paws and was looking at him with a taunting smirk on her face. Mizuki turning to Naruto and then shifting his eyes to Sasuke smirked and said, "Observe the power it takes to defeat the demon." Mizuki then vanished to all eyes except for Naruto, who could see the man moving at a faster pace than most others, but still pretty slow to him. Naruto slowly taking a step to the left, lifted up his left hand and slammed it into Mizuki's chest. Mizuki, coughing up a good amount of blood, took several steps back and wondered how the demon could see him. Naruto, ignoring the blood on his arm, pushed a little wind chakra into his hand and blasted Mizuki back. Mizuki, shaking his head, snarled and said, "Stupid demon, your tricks won't work again." He then ripped off his shirt to reveal something that made Naruto actually narrow his eyes. Sitting in the middle of Mizuki's chest was a seal, that was made by Orochimaru. Naruto, breaking down the seal with just a look, growled as this seal forced the user to draw in ki. Mizuki, laughing, said, "Behold the power bestowed to me by Orochimaru-sama. The power to defeat and kill this demon." He then activated the seal and Naruto actually gained wide eyes when Mizuki's power level jumped up severely and was just over 9,000. Before Naruto could respond, Mizuki vanished and landed a solid blow across Naruto's jaw, sending Naruto crashing through several trees. Mizuki, with insane glee in his eyes, laughed and said, "Know your place, lowly demon." He then turned to look at Ashley and said, "Your turn, you stupid panther." He was about to dash towards Ashley, when suddenly an immense killing intent came crashing down on the clearing and Konoha in general. Mizuki, trembling in fear, slowly turned his head and gained wide eyes, spotting Naruto standing in the middle of the trees with his hair shadowing his face. Naruto, slowly lifting his hand, touched his bloody lip. He, looking at his hand, felt unholy rage flood his body. He, slowly lowering his trembling hand, glared at Mizuki with pure hate. Naruto then brought his own ki out and a giant aura of teal ki shined a light in the clearing. Naruto, with a snarl on his face, said, "You insolent whelp. You dare draw blood from me, the prince of all Saiyans." Naruto said, "I'll kill you." He then literally vanished from everyone watching, and the next thing anyone knew, Mizuki was crashing through several trees. When Mizuki finally stopped, he was at least 10 miles away from Konoha. Naruto, appearing with his right hand pointed at the downed and struggling to stand Mizuki, said, "Dine in hell, traitor." Double Sunday. Mizuki never stood a chance as a huge beam of purple energy then slammed into the exact spot he was laying in and a huge explosion occurred. When the smoke and falling debris cleared, Iruka and Sasuke shit their pants, spotting the gaping hole where Mizuki used to be. Naruto, snorting, lowered his hand. He, letting his aura of ki drop and gaining control over his killing intent, turned around and appeared back in the clearing. He, looking at the still shitting himself Sasuke, said, "I will let the Hokage deal with you, Uchiha. He will decide your punishment." He, turning to Iruka, floated over to the man and placed his first 2 fingers on the man's forehead. Naruto said, "As for you, Iruka, I'll go ahead and send you to the hospital." Iruka was about to say something when he blinked and he was in the emergency room of Konoha's hospital. Naruto, having just used instant transmission to send Iruka to the hospital, turned to Ashley and said, "Come on Ashley, let's go home." Ashley, nodding, removed her paw from the scroll and blasted into the air, heading home. Naruto, looking at the forbidden scroll, thought about taking it as technically it was his, but realizing he didn't really need it, turned around and blasted back to his home. Sasuke, finally finishing shitting himself, realized he should probably run, but before he could even move a muscle, the Anbu appeared and said, "You're coming with us, Uchiha." Sasuke groaned hearing this. The next morning, Naruto was standing in his bedroom wondering what he should wear today. He was thinking of wearing what he normally wore, but today he met his team and sensei for the first time and didn't want to not look his best. Then again, he didn't want to go full Saiyan armor and have to wear all of the weight the Saiyan armor was all day. He then groaned, realizing that his 4 female cousins and aunt may have turned him into a diva. He, shifting his eyes to the bed, rolled his eyes, spotting Ashley eating the golden rabbit she was finally able to catch. He wished that he could just go back to bed, as last night's training session was still a little too fresh, and he was sore as hell. Groaning again, he turned back to his closet and decided to dress like Brawly today. This meant that he wasn't wearing a shirt today, and would be wearing some bling. Once fully dressed, he walked outside of his home with Ashley trotting beside him, a pleased smirk on her face. Apparently the golden rabbit was extremely tender and was the perfect meal for his ravenous panther. He was nearly to the academy when he suddenly realized that he had forgotten Excalibur. Groaning again, he turned around and walked all the way back home and grabbed his sword, along with his kunai and shuriken packs, and then checked the mirror one last time to make sure the cheap shot from Mizuki hadn't left any damage. He then realized that he was already an hour late. Groaning once more, he turned to Ashley and said, "Fuck this. Come here." She chuckling walked to sit beside him. He, placing both of his fingers on his forehead, closed his eyes and said, "Smart-ass panther." The two of them then vanished, as Naruto had just used instant transmission to teleport to the academy. Iruka, having already gone through his speech about the new responsibilities his students now had, was about to dish out the teams, when suddenly Naruto and Ashley appeared. Instantly every single female and a few of the males blushed. The reason why? Well, Naruto wasn't wearing a shirt and his upper body could be seen, with his 8-pack of abs visible for all to see. Naruto, opening his eyes, walked over to the occupied seat by the window. He, looking at Sasuke who was in his seat, tilted his head and said, "Move now." Sasuke, glaring, said, "Make me doby." Naruto, rolling his eyes, shocked almost everyone when he grabbed Sasuke by the back of his neck and tossed the boy clear across the room. Naruto, ignoring the screeching of Sasuke's fangirls, sat down in his seat and set his eyes on Iruka, who sighed, expecting Naruto to do something like this. He, waiting for Sasuke to get in a new seat, coughed and started to go through the teams. He, landing on Team 7, nearly choked on his saliva. The paper said that Team 7 was Naruto Shinjin, Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. Iruka, looking up at the three people, wondered what the Hokage was smoking making this team. Shaking his head, he coughed once more and said, "Team 7 is Naruto Shinjin, Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno." He wasn't the only to notice how Naruto's eyebrows started to twitch violently after this was announced. He, ignoring Sakura's little speech about true love conquering all, moved along. He, smiling, said, "Your sensei will be here any moment to pick you up. Remember, you are official Konoha ninja now, do it proud." He then left the room. Naruto, once the man was gone, instantly put his hands together and closed his eyes. He then said, "Aunt Akiko, I ask you for patience and the strength not to kill the two idiots on my team. I ask that you lend Ashley the strength not to rip the two idiots to shreds, and I ask you to stay my hand so that I may not slay them." Ashley, having closed her eyes, also growled a few times, adding to the prayer. Naruto, stopping that, turned to Ashley and asked, "Why exactly did you ask for a 10-foot tall cow?" Ashley growled a few times and Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, "Your stomach has taken over the spot where your brain used to be." Ashley growled a few times and glared at him. Everyone else in the room sweat dropped, wondering how and why he was talking to a panther. 3 hours later, and Naruto was fighting every urge in his body not to kill Sakura, who hadn't stopped pestering Sasuke for a date since the first sensei came and got their students. Ashley had gone hunting after the first hour, as she wanted to gut Sakura and then do the same to Sasuke. Said boy also wanted to gut the pink-haired girl, as she had not shut up for the past 3 hours, constantly asking him for dates, somehow ignoring the fact that he had said no at least 20 times already, with the last time he telling her that he'd never go out on a date with her and he'd rather date Kiba than her. Sakura was blissfully unaware that both of her teammates wanted to kill her and was trying to get Sasuke to agree to go out on a date with her. Naruto was about to snap, when the door to the classroom finally opened. All eyes turned to the door and Naruto wanted to ask his aunt why. Standing in the door was Kakashi Hitaki and the recently returned Kushina Uzumaki. Kakashi, reading his smut, asked, "Are you 3 Team 7? Sakura eagerly nodded. Kakashi said, "My first impression is that you're boring. Meet us on the in 5 minutes or be put in the ranks to wait another year for a sensei." He and Kushina then vanished. Naruto was very tempted to go home and wait another year, but sighed as he needed to get out of the village to increase his strength, as his mother had banned him from using the time chamber anymore until he faced someone of at least a rank status. He, standing up and ignoring how both of his teammates had already run out the door, placed his 2 fingers on his forehead and used instant transmission. He, appearing on the roof seconds later, sat down on the bench, ignoring how both Kakashi and Kushina were looking at him. Sakura and Sasuke bursting through the roof gained wide eyes spotting Naruto already there. Kakashi was about to say something when Naruto turned his head in a northern direction and said, "Ashley Shinjin, you stop stalking Akamichi right now and get your panther ass here." Everyone was confused until Ashley literally landed on the roof. She, ignoring everyone, walked over to Naruto and growled a few times. Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, "I don't care if you're a man-eater. Only the idiotic civilians and anyone who blatantly disrespects me or the Shinjin name is on the menu. Besides the idiot Uchiha, as he would give you a rather nasty case of indigestion." Ashley, snorting, sat down beside him. Naruto, ignoring this snort, turned back to Kakashi and said, "You can start now." Kakashi, coughing, said, "Right now that we're all here, let's introduce ourselves." Sakura, blinking, asked, "What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei?" Kushina said, "He means say things about yourself, like what you like, things you hate, any hobbies and dreams for the future." Sakura, hearing this, blinked and asked, "Why don't you start to show us how it's done?" Kakashi, eyes smiling, said, "All right. Let's see, my name is Kakashi Hitaki, I'm a Genin. The things I like are only God knows. Things I dislike are anyone knows. My hobby is classified in my dreams for the future, truthfully I haven't really thought of one." Sakura and Sasuke both sweat dropped only learning his name, while Naruto smirked as that was a pretty good way of telling someone none of your business. Ashley snorted, thinking that Kakashi was trying too hard to be cool. Kushina, rolling her eyes, said, "My name is Kushina Uzumaki, I'm a Genin. The things I like are my clan and family and salt ramen. Things I dislike are fangirls and arrogance. My hobby is gardening and my dream for the future is to become the Hokage." Sakura and Sasuke nodded to this. Naruto had ignored every word that had come out of Kushina's mouth, while Ashley wondered if Kushina was a good snack. Kakashi, pointing at Sakura, said, "Your turn, Pinky." Sakura, bristling at the nickname, followed Kushina's lead and told everyone her likes, dislikes, hobby and dream for the future. Kushina and Kakashi both sweat dropped learning how much of a fangirl she was. Sasuke was making plans to change the security seals on his home. Naruto actually felt a little pity for Sasuke for having to deal with such a menace and didn't really care that Sakura hated him. Ashley wondered if Naruto would let her eat the pink-haired thing. Kakashi, pointing to Sasuke, said, "Your turn, Emo." Sasuke glared at his nickname and gave out his monologue. Sakura swooned where she stood, thinking that Sasuke was so cool. Kakashi sighed, knowing the person Sasuke was talking about. Kushina rolled her eyes as Makoto's baby boy was a brooding emo avenger. Naruto was really bored and wondered if he should have skipped this meeting. Ashley now understood why Naruto didn't want her to eat Sasuke. Kakashi, shaking his head, pointed to Naruto and said, "Your turn, oh so great Lord Shinjin." Naruto, narrowing his eyes at how Kakashi had just mocked him, said, "My name is Naruto Shinjin. My likes are simple really. I like to fight strong opponents, Ashley, Ayame, Tucci, the other 6 members of my clan, and my sword Excalibur. Things I dislike is simple. I don't like Konoha, the 2 idiots on my team, and anyone who mocks the name Shinjin. My only hobby is training, as everything else is pointless and will make me weaker. My dream for the future is more of a future reality." He, looking up at the sky, said, "I will be most powerful Saiyan to ever exist and my legend will live on forever. I will transcend the limits of mortality and I will be more powerful than the likes of Hashirama Senju, Madara Uchiha, Tobirama Senju, Minato Namikaze, Hanzo of the Salamander, Kisame Hoshigaki, and even the Sage of 6 Paths. I will be the king of all Saiyans and the Prince of Death, and most importantly I will learn the Shi number 13 Senman Bunya." All eyes were wide hearing this, and Ashley was looking at her owner in a new light. Kakashi, shaking out of his shock, said, "That's a mighty tall order, Naruto." Naruto snorted hearing this. Sasuke, huffing, said, "You'll never be that powerful, Dobi. Only an elite like me can be that powerful." Naruto, rolling his eyes, asked, "Remind me again, Uchiha, who has defeated you over 20 times using only his tail, and who was it that killed that traitor last night while you stood there and shit yourself like the arrogant coward you are?" Sasuke, shaking with rage, said, "Shut up, Dobi." Naruto, turning to look at Sasuke, said, "Answer my question, Uchiha." Sasuke, roaring, launched at Naruto and was promptly slapped by Naruto's tail, breaking his jaw and sending him crashing into the door. Naruto snorting stood up and said, "Idiotic Uchiha never learns. He will never defeat me." Sakura, having rushed to Sasuke's side, was fussing over him, despite having seen something like this multiple times. Kakashi, sighing, said, "Meet in training ground 7 at 8 tomorrow morning. Don't eat breakfast and come prepared for battle." Naruto, hearing this, nodded and turned to Ashley and asked, "Are you ready?" Ashley, standing up, stretched and growled. Naruto, nodding, shot into the air and blasted towards his home. Ashley, roaring, followed him. Kakashi, having seen Naruto do this before, walked over to Sasuke and picked the injured boy up. He telling Sakura the same thing he told Naruto, shushined to the hospital to get Sasuke fixed up. Kushina, looking in the direction Naruto had just taken off inside, wishing that she could go back in time and bring Naruto with her when she left the village with her clan. Sakura, worried about her Sasuke-kun and pissed off at Naruto, ran home to tell her parents about today. The next day at 9, Kushina, Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke were all standing in training ground 7 waiting for Naruto to show up. Speaking of, he just arrived using instant transmission. Everyone blinked, spotting how different Naruto was dressed today. Naruto was now dressed in the purple training gi Piccolo and Gohan wore. Instead of blue wristbands and sash, he had gold wristbands and a golden sash. On his feet were the classic Saiyan boots and his tail could be seen swaying behind him. Attached to his back was his sword and he looked very calm. Sakura, with a scowl on her face, screeched, "Where have you been, idiot? We were supposed to be here at 8, not 9, you dumb ass." Naruto, sending a deadpan look at the pink-haired girl, said, "I was trying to wake the lazy-ass panther known as Ashley up, who was sleeping on Excalibur. Damn panther didn't want to fucking wake up, so I had to lift her up and use my tail to move Excalibur from underneath her. I then had to actually get dressed, because there is no way in hell I'm coming here in just my underwear. After that I kinda had breakfast." Kakashi, with a twitching eyebrow, asked, "Why exactly did you have breakfast when I specifically told you not to eat breakfast?" Naruto, turning to look at him, said, "Because I don't follow idiotic advice and you telling me not to eat breakfast was beyond idiotic. Plus you haven't proven yourself worthy yet, so I don't have to listen to a single word that comes out of your mouth." Kakashi's eyebrow, now twitching dangerously, said, "Since we're all here, allow me to explain what is about to happen." He then explained what was happening. After answering Sakura's question, Kushina said, "Begin." Sasuke and Sakura quickly vanished, while Naruto remained where he was with a bored look on his face. Kakashi, looking at Naruto, asked, "You do know the test started, right?" Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, "Yes, I know this test started, idiot sensei. I also know that this test is pointless, as the two idiots wouldn't know the meaning of teamwork if it bit them on the ass." Kakashi's eyes weren't the only one to widen hearing this, and Kushina asked, "How did you?" Naruto, snorting, said, "Wasn't that hard to figure it out. In fact, a 2-year-old could have figured it out." Kakashi, hearing yet another insult at his intelligence, had both eyebrows twitching with anger. Kushina, ignoring this, asked, "What are you going to do?" Naruto, yawning, said, "I think I'll take a nap until the two idiots have had a go at the two of you." He then, laying down right where he stood, made sweat drops grow on the back of Kushina and Kakashi's head when he did start to nap. Kakashi, shaking his head, said, "He's weird." Kushina, sighing, said, "He's arrogant." Kakashi, pulling out his book, asked, "Shall we test the other two?" Kushina, nodding, said, "I'll take the Haruno, you take the Uchiha." Kakashi, nodding, said, "Sure." Both people then vanished, neither of them noticing Ashley the panther walk into the clearing and lay down beside Naruto, who mumbled out, "Nice to see you made it, Ashley." Ashley, yawning, was soon also taking a nap. An hour later, and both Kushina and Kakashi wanted to scream. Why? Well, they had tested Sasuke and Sakura and both people had failed their test miserably. Kushina had used the tiniest amount of killing intent she could produce and Sakura had shit herself, screamed in fear and passed out. After Sakura had recovered from this, Kushina had tested out the girls' fighting skills and was appalled at how abysmal they were. She had quickly knocked Sakura out and tied the girl to one of the stumps and quickly wondered how Sakura had even got through the academy. Kakashi had tested Sasuke and was only slightly impressed, as Sasuke had used a fire jutsu when he was supposedly reading his book, trying to capitalize on Kakashi's distracted state. Of course it didn't work and Sasuke had tried to run to a new hiding space, only for Kakashi to appear and force the Uchiha into a battle. Kakashi had buried the boy up to his neck in the dirt and had dangled the bell in front of the boy. Sasuke had, after managing to escape, attacked him again, shooting off at the mouth about him being an elite and someone such as Kakashi should just give him a bell. Kakashi had, quickly having enough of this, knocked the arrogant boy out and tied him to the other stump. He and Kushina were both now making their way to the still napping Naruto. They, reaching the clearing, blinked, spotting Ashley actually sleeping on top of Naruto. The only way they could tell that Naruto was actually under Ashley was the thick black monkey tail swaying near her chest. Kakashi, coughing, blinked when Ashley and Naruto both woke up. Ashley, getting off of Naruto, stretched her body, while Naruto stood up and brushed himself off. Naruto, with a bored look in his eyes, asked, "How did the two idiots do?" Kushina, sighing, informed Naruto of what happened. Naruto, snorting, said, "Can't say I didn't see that coming." He then, cracking his knuckles, said, "Alright, since you've had the rest, I guess I can give you the best." Kakashi, sighing, said, "You somehow sound more arrogant than the Uchiha." Naruto, hearing this, snorted and said, "You say that now, wait until you've seen and felt my power." Naruto then, closing his eyes, started to tap into his ki and chakra. Both Jonin gained wide eyes when Naruto and Ashley both became cloaked in aura of pure power. Naruto, unleashing more of his energy, made the ground shatter underneath him and Ashley, leaving the two of them standing in craters. He didn't know it, but he was unleashing so much power the sky around Konoha had gotten dark and lightning was sparking in the air. Kushina, being a chakra sensor, took several steps back as Naruto was putting out enough energy to equal the One-Tails. Kakashi, trying to cover his face as Naruto's power-up had kicked up dust and rocks, was shocked that Naruto was so powerful he was changing the very weather. Naruto, slowly opening his eyes and allowing his power to seep into his eyes, said, "Behold the power of the Prince of all Saiyans and his lovely partner Ashley." Ashley, looking much more dangerous than normal, which was insane, was looking at both Kushina and Kakashi like they were slabs of meat. Kakashi, moving his hand to his headband, lifted it up to reveal his other eye that was closed. He, opening it, revealed a single Sharingan. Kushina, drawing her sword, wondered why it felt like she was about to be taken to the limit. Naruto, turning to look at Ashley, said, "You take Kushina, I want Idiot Sensei." Ashley, nodding, roared and blasted towards the wide-eyed Kushina. Kushina barely had time to jump back to avoid being sliced clean in half by Ashley. Kakashi, not having seen Ashley move, was shocked and terrified. His instincts then screamed at him to move. He, moving to the left, gained wide eyes when Naruto's right fist appeared where his face had been seconds ago. Both Kushina and Kakashi could only think, "Fast." Naruto didn't even know that his mom was watching along with his aunt and his cousins, or that Sarutobi had called the council, the other Jonin, the Anbu, and the Chunin to the council chambers to watch this. Kira, sitting in heaven with Aki, had the largest smile on her face, knowing that her baby was very powerful. Aki was simply amazed at how powerful her nephew was. Rachel was ecstatic, literally being able to feel her younger cousin's power in heaven. Gabriella was very happy that the only male Shinjin wasn't weak, like she thought. Michelle was wondering how powerful Naruto would be when he achieved Super Saiyan status. Lucifer, licking her lips, wanted to kidnap her little cousin and become closer with him on an intimate level. Sarutobi, as white as a ghost, couldn't believe how much power Naruto had. The civilian council were now even more afraid of Naruto and Ashley, as the power they were putting out was simply not human. The shinobi council were shitting their pants at someone actually having so much power they changed the weather. Danzo was drooling at what he could do with the power Naruto was putting out on his side. The other two elders were also white as ghost, as the power Naruto was putting out could literally make him a tailed beast. Asuma, with wide eyes, had dropped his cigarette, as for a genin to have this much power was unreal. Kurenai was quickly making plans on making her students swear an oath to never face Naruto in battle. Guy, with a serious look on his face, said, "I can't believe I'm about to say this, but he is too youthful." Eyes widened even more hearing this. Anko, with her jaw scraping the ground, asked, "What the fuck?" Iruka was shocked as he knew Naruto was powerful, but this was insane. Yugo, behind her mask, was astounded at the power the person she loved more than anything was putting out. The Uzumaki clan in the council chambers were all terrified at the power Naruto had. Kakashi and Kushina both then had to move, as Naruto swung with his other fist, and Ashley tried to slash her with her right paw. Kakashi, shaking off his previous shock, focused solely on Naruto, because he knew that Naruto was not playing games with him. Kushina, shaking off her own shock, focused on Ashley, knowing that the panther was a threat. Naruto, spotting Kakashi focus on him, smiled and said, "Good, you're focusing. Hopefully this battle isn't too boring or ends quickly." Ashley, spotting Kushina now focusing on her, shocked everyone besides Naruto and the other Shinjin when she said, "Oh good, you're focusing all of you attention on me. Like my father, owner, I would hate for this battle to end too quickly." Kakashi, storing the fact that Ashley could talk away for later, said, "Maybe I was wrong and you aren't arrogant." Kushina, doing the same as Kakashi, said, "Come at me with everything you've got." Naruto and Ashley both smirking and laughing and said, "You got it, you got it." Naruto then blasted towards Kakashi, who flipped into the air, just as the spot he had been standing on exploded from the sheer force behind Naruto's kick. Kushina, having jumped, also couldn't stop the gasp that escaped her mouth when the ground below the charging Ashley ripped up, creating a scar on the landscape. Kakashi, bringing his arms up, braced himself just as Naruto appeared and landed a solid punch. Kakashi was knocked clearly through several trees and had to flip himself over to stop his momentum. He, shaking his numb from the impact arms, looked at the damage Naruto's punch had caused. He now understood that Naruto's wasn't just an arrogant genin, this boy was powerful and had the confidence to back it up. He then jumped just as a yellow ball of energy landed where he had been standing. The ball then exploded, creating a powerful smokescreen. Kakashi, moving to the left, barely managed to avoid being kicked in the jaw by Naruto. The Sharingan in Kakashi's eyes, detecting Naruto's tail heading his way, reached out and grabbed the object. Kakashi instantly regretted this action, when the tail literally sliced open both the gloves he was wearing and the palms of his hand. He, jumping back, looked at the tail and asked, "What the hell?" Naruto, laughing, said, "Normally a Saiyan's tail would be his or her weakness, but I have specifically trained to null this weakness, and my tail is now a lethal weapon with a defense mechanism. As you can tell, it slices clean through most cloth and flesh with the greatest of ease." Kakashi, hearing this, stored this information away for later. He then, blurring through hand signs, took a breath and unleashed a powerful fireball. Naruto, feeling this fireball coming, blasted a ball of ki at the fireball and watched as his ki destroyed the fireball. He then blinked when several Kakashi came barreling towards him. Naruto, easily recognizing the shadow clone jutsu, got into his taijutsu stance and waited for the clones to attack. He didn't have to wait long, as the clones attacked in groups of two. Naruto, deflecting the attack of the first one, slammed his hand into the ribs of the second one, making it burst into smoke. He, spinning around, kicked the third one across the clearing and slapped the fourth one with his tail. He, ducking under the attack of the first one, grabbed it by its leg and slammed it into two more, killing all three of them. He then, catching the punches of number 8 and 9, moved his head to the side to avoid the kick by number 10. Smirking, he tightened his grip on the two clones and said, "Get ready for an unpleasant ride." Naruto then started to spin around, making the wind pick up. He was soon spinning so fast that he was literally inside of a tornado. This tornado was of course normal, until Naruto pushed some ki into it. This turned the tornado to a huge swirling monstrosity that was ripping everything ground around it up with brutal force. Kakashi, trying to keep his feet planted in the ground, had wide eyes, not believing what he was seeing. He then felt his last three clones dispel and his eyes widened, as inside of the tornado Naruto was literally a ball of death and destruction. He then heard Naruto start to laugh. Naruto, inside of his tornado of doom, laughed loudly and said, "Dodge this idiot, sensei." Dark Radiance Twister. Kakashi shit himself when the tornado tripled in size and literally became a vacuum of death with a glowing Naruto in the center of it. Kakashi, thinking quickly, did the fireball jutsu again, but gained wide eyes when, instead of increasing the power of the fireball, the vacuum drained the life out of it. Kakashi, turning around, decided that tactical retreat was the logical answer and ran like a cockroach from the light. Kushina, covered in small nicks and cuts from her battle so far with Ashley, gained wide eyes, spotting the giant twister in the exact spot where Naruto was battling Kakashi. She was then forced to jump back when the branch she was standing on turned into 1,000 toothpicks. Ashley appearing under the branch had this manic look in her golden panther eyes. She laughing loudly said, "Father is having fun as that smut-reading idiot was forced to retreat or be consumed by the dark radiance twister." She then roared as a huge wave of water from Kushina came towards her. This roar literally froze the water and chilled the air by several degrees. Ashley laughing started to glow with ki. She laughing just as loud as Naruto said, "Dark radiance explosion." Kushina nearly had an heart attack, when the forest itself started to explode in bubbles of pure darkness. She jumping back and trying to run away from the explosions gained wide eyes when Ashley said, "Atomic implosion." Kushina was then literally ripped and dragged into the air, along with all of the bubbles of darkness. She now floating above the still laughing Ashley gained wide eyes when the temperature went from cold to scorching hot at a very alarming pace. Ashley laughing even louder said, "Total annihilation explosion." Kushina hearing this quickly replaced herself with a log and realizing that she was pretty far away, turned and gained wide eyes when a huge pitch-black mushroom cloud appeared where she had just been battling. She knew exactly what this indicated and wondered if Ashley had survived the explosion. The shockwave then hit and she had to stab her katana into the ground to keep from being blown away. She then noticed two figures sail by her. She instantly recognized them as Sasuke and Sakura still tied to their stumps. The shockwave then wore off and Kushina took a quick look around. She couldn't help but marvel at the effects of the attack Ashley had used on what she was sure is training ground 8. She feeling a chakra signature appear beside her, drew her sword and was ready to attack, when she realized it was a little roughed up Kakashi. Kakashi looking at the overturned trees and the split open ground said, "This is unbelievable." Kushina nodding said, "That a panther could create such a devastating attack is outstanding." Kakashi said, "Naruto's attacks were just as bad, and his tail cut through my gloves and the flesh on my palms." Kushina hearing this said, "It's obvious we're not dealing with an arrogant genin and his pet." Both of their eyes widened when Naruto's voice was heard saying, "Correct." They both turned to find Naruto and a black-haired girl with an amazing body floating in front of them. The girl looking at Kushina with her glowing golden eyes said, "That last attack was supposed to do more damage, but it seems as I had waited too long." Naruto nodding said, "The vacuum I created would have allowed that attack to easily destroy training grounds 7, 8, 9 and do considerable damage to 10. Kakashi hearing this gained wide eyes and quickly realized that Naruto and Ashley's attacks worked together to create a more powerful attack. Kushina realizing that girl was Ashley said, "I see, so you're not really a panther?" Ashley smirking said, "Oh, I am a panther. But my father gave me some of his blood allowing me to assume a human, or should I say Saiyan form." All eyes widened hearing this and the people who feared Ashley as a panther suddenly realized just how dangerous she really was. Kakashi now slightly afraid asked, "Why did you assume your Saiyan form?" She laughing loudly said, "The two of you have earned our respect. Thus I talked father into showing you one of the very reasons I have this form and he gave me his blood." Kushina nervous asked, "What is it?" Naruto sitting down on the ground along with Ashley said, "Fusion." Kakashi blinking asked, "What do you mean by fusion?" Ashley still laughing said, "Exactly as he said, idiot sensei. Fusion is something one of the strongest Saiyans to ever exist learned from a group of long-dead aliens that allows two people with equal power levels to fuse into an even stronger warrior. This used to only work for 30 minutes, but my father with his natural talent in seals, the unnatural amount of death force flowing through him, and that super powerful sword on his back has found a way to make the fusion work for long as we want." Everyone, including the two goddesses and 4 angels all had wide eyes hearing this. Naruto smirking at the terrified looks in Kakashi and Kushina's eyes and the terrified vibes rolling off of the village lifted up his tail to reveal something that shocked Kakashi and Kushina to their cores. Hanging from the tip of his tail were the 2 bells. Kakashi and Kushina looking down at the bells attached to their belts gained wide eyes when they transformed into pebbles tied to string. Ashley now laughing like a maniac said, "He's had them since the beginning and the two of us had already passed this silly little test from the beginning." Naruto still with a smirk on his face said, "We just wanted to test you too, because I refuse to have weaklings for senseis. I'm proud to say you have both earned some respect from the two of us." Ashley finally stopping her laughter gained a serious look on her face said, Now it's time for the four of you to go through our test. Kushina hearing this gained wide eyes and turned to spot both Sasuke and Sakura free from the stumps with an confused and confident look on their faces. She turning back asked, "What is this test?" Naruto laughing said, "The four of you have to last an hour with our fusion, with said fusion using only 15% of its full power. Anything goes, and you are encouraged to go for killing or maiming blows." Kakashi hearing this was shocked and asked, "How in the hell do you expect us to do this after battling you two and with two weak genin?" Ashley smirking said, "All four of you have already been restored to full health, and two of you are seasoned shinobi who can handle alterations. Now then get ready." Naruto and Ashley then got in a stance that looked like they were about to dance. Naruto and Ashley with both of their eyes closed said, "Fu." They moving a little said, "Saiyan." Now leaning towards each other with the tips of their fingers touching said, "Ha." A very bright light then spread out from the spot they had been standing in. A form could slowly be seen taking shape in the light. It looked tall and masculine. The light then died down, and standing there was a being that easily made even the most women in Konoha look like absolute garbage. This being had long black and red hair, that had two bangs hanging over the middle of the face. Said face was flawless and heart-shaped. The eyes were closed so what looked like a thick layer of black eyeshadow could be seen. The nose was perfect. The lips were set into a smirk and what looked like fangs could be seen poking out of the top lip. The figure had a lean and powerful neck, that led to CC cup breast and a tight and toned stomach. The arms were packed with power and added to the power incarnate look the being seemed to be going for. It had a pair of long legs, wide hips and a normal ass. Of course swaying behind this being was the classic Saiyan tail. This figure was of course dressed. It had on black vest that had orange puffy shoulders. On each wrist was orange armbands. It had a orange sash keeping its pants up, said pants were black. On its feet were orange and black boots. This figure then opened its eyes to reveal silver slitted eyes. It uncrossing its arms started to laugh. It then calming down looked Kakashi dead in the eyes and said, "Behold thy instrument of doom. I am Shinjin, the fusion of Naruto Shinjin, Prince of all Saiyans and Ashley Shinjin, Princess of all Saiyans." She then gaining an insane gleam in her eyes said, "I do hope the four of you can entertain me." She then started to laugh with insane glee and her monstrous power came roaring to life, creating a huge aura of sickly yellow energy. She still laughing said, "Get ready because here I come." She then literally vanished and the next thing anyone knew Sakura was crashing through trees, a footprint on her face. Kakashi cursing said, "Damn it, she's even faster than Naruto was." Sasuke was then bent over by a crippling punch to the gut by a smirking Shinjin. He was then lifted high into the air by the same hand and was slammed hard on Shinjin's knee. This forced Sasuke to empty his already empty stomach onto the ground and for blood to pour out of his mouth. She laughing at this, lifted him up again and then slammed him back down on her knee. Kushina spotting this tossed a kunai with an explosive tag wrapped around the handle at Shinjin, who to Kushina and Kakashi's shock let the kunai hit her and explode. When the smoke cleared, Shinjin could now be seen repeatedly punching the absolutely comatose body of Sasuke with no remorse. Kakashi dashing towards her kicked her in the face, and gained wide eyes when she wasn't even bothered in the least by his kick. Kushina creating about 50 clones had them rush Shinjin while she herself tried to rescue Sasuke from the pure abuse he was going through. Kakashi also creating several clones had them assist Kushina's clones while he went to go check on Sakura. Shinjin feeling several energy signatures heading her way, stopped beating on her Uchiha punching bag and turned to find 48 shadow clones of Kushina and 10 Kakashi shadow clones laughed and said, "I'm really enjoying this time and it's only been 30 seconds. She then blurred forward and slammed her fist into the stomach into one of the Kushina clones. She ignoring the poof of smoke, turned and caught the katana of another Kushina clone. She kneeing this clone in the chest, slapped a Kakashi clone with her tail, not only dispelling him but several Kushina clones. She laughing grabbed 2 Kakashi clones by their throats and snapped their necks. She then kicked a Kushina clone directly in the stomach, forcing it to dispel. She slamming the heads of 2 more Kushina clones into each other then backhanded a Kakashi clone. She was then hit by several fireballs from Kakashi clones. She laughing in the smoke the attack had made roared into the shock and horror of the clones created a huge dome of yellow energy. She now laughing again, spread her legs and said, "Almighty explosion of the orb of hell." She and the orb then exploded destroying every single clone around her and ripping up the ground she had been standing on, along with the clones. She walking out of the smoke with not a scratch on her, with a sick and demented smile on her face. She spotting her punching bag gone, along with Kushina laughed and said, 58 minutes to go. Kushina hearing this and getting the memories from her clones shivered in pure fear, as the monster that Ashley and Naruto had become was obviously insane. She holding Sasuke on her back jumped down into the clearing where Kakashi was tending to the unconscious Sakura. She jogging over to him said, "That thing is a fucking monster." Kakashi pushing Sakura's dislocated shoulder back into place said, "Sakura is out of it and even if she was awake she'd be in way too much pain to be any help." That one kick from Shinjin fractured her jaw, dislocated both shoulders, broke the entire right arm including the hand, and the impact with the trees and ground may have fractured several of her ribs. Kushina hearing this gained wide eyes as one attack from Shinjin had done that. She quickly setting Sasuke down had Kakashi do a scan on the boy. Kakashi shaking his head said, "Both of his arms are broken, his right leg is broken and several of his ribs have been fractured. Hell, Shinjin's attack may have ruptured his stomach and bruised his sternum." Kushina hearing this cursed and said, "That means it's down to the two of us." Kakashi nodding said, "Yes, but before we go after her, or she comes for us we need to stash Sakura and Sasuke somewhere safe." Kushina nodding pulled out a large scroll and said, "We'll put them in this scroll until we finish this test." Kakashi hearing this did a little mental debate with himself over if this was a good idea or not. He coming to a conclusion quickly picked up Sakura and sealed her inside of the scroll. He then did the same for Sasuke. Kushina once both were sealed away, did a few hand signs and to Kakashi's shock summoned a wolf. Kushina handing the scroll to the wolf said, "Take this to the summoning realm Riku. Keep it safe and don't return unless you feel me summon you." The wolf nodding took the scroll into his mouth and vanished in a poof of smoke. Once that was done Kushina said, "All right, now to deal with that monster." Kakashi was about to say something when both of their instincts screamed at them to move. They doing so gained wide eyes when a massive ball of red energy slammed where they had been standing and destroyed it. They shifting their eyes tried to find where the ball had come from. They both then heard the maniacal laughter of Shinjin. Looking where they heard it coming from could see Shinjin holding her right hand out. She still laughing said, "I found you." Kakashi and Kushina both jumped into action and created a new batch of clones and sent them charging towards Shinjin who laughed and said, "You tried this trick already." Kakashi and Kushina gained wide eyes when their clones were eradicated before even getting near Shinjin. Said being licking her lips asked, "Where did you hide the two weaklings?" Kushina narrowing her eyes said, "We're not telling you." Shinjin hearing this actually lost some of her smile and said, "Yes you will." Kakashi shaking his head said, "No we're not." Shinjin hearing this let the smile drop completely from her face. She now looking upset said, "Tell me now. I want to know where they are." Kushina shaking her head said, "No." Shinjin now with a rather nasty snarl on her face roared, "Tell me where they are right now." Kakashi shaking his head once more said, "No." Shinjin hearing this was now trembling from how upset she was. She clenching her fist so hard that she was bleeding said, "You insolent whelps, you will tell me where you hid the two weaklings right now or I will show the hatred of the Saiyans." Kushina and Kakashi both said, "We're not telling you anything and never will, not even if you torture us." Shinjin hearing this screamed and shrouded her body with her ki. She focusing it to one hand said, "You asked for this." She then launched a greenish-white ball into the sky. Kakashi and Kushina were confused wondering what she was doing. She then starting to laugh again said, "You're gonna get it now. You're gonna regret not telling me where you put those weaklings." She then went back to laughing. Kakashi was wondering what she was talking about, until he suddenly felt her power output increasing at an alarming rate. Kushina also sensing this asked, "What the hell is happening?" She suddenly got her answer when Shinjin started to go through a change. First she started to grow taller and more muscular. She kept growing until she easily towered over Konoha, and everyone watched as thick black fur started to cover her body. Her eyes changed from silver to large red orbs of rage. Her face quickly shifted to resemble that of a gibbon or baboon. The transformation ended when the fur completely covered the body. Kakashi, Kushina and the village hidden in the leaves were all wide eyes spotting massive creature Shinjin had transformed into. The beast then started to laugh and looked down at Kushina and Kakashi. It smirking darkly said, "Behold the hatred of the Saiyans. I am the Uzaru form and my power is 10 times more than what it was in my humanoid form." She then chuckling at the now snow-white Kakashi and Kushina said, "Don't worry fools, I'm still only using 15% of my full power. Oh, and you have 30 minutes left until you pass the test. Well, considering that you took the other two out of the battle, I am going to penalize the two of you by adding 20 minutes to the test, unless you're willing to tell me what you did with the other two weaklings." Kakashi hearing this was very tempted to tell this true monster towering over him where Sasuke and Sakura was, but shook his head clearing his mind of such treacherous thoughts. Kushina scowling said, "We're not afraid of you, you big monkey." Shinjin hearing this insult laughed and said, "Good, as I'm gonna enjoy turning you into a pancake." Kakashi cracking his knuckles and said, "Bring it." Shinjin then roared and with speed that was uncanny for something as large as she was now, slammed her fist to the ground nearly squashing Kakashi in one blow. Kakashi having moved at the last second was now standing beside Kushina. He turning to her said, "We may have just bitten off more than we can chew." Kushina shaking her head said, "Not if I can summon Lana, the boss of the Wolf Clan." Kakashi hearing this asked, "How much time do you need?" Kushina said, "At the least 8 minutes, the most 16. He hearing this nodded and said, "All right. Here's the plan, I'll buy you the time needed to summon her. You summon her and ask if she can help turn the tide of battle." Kushina nodding said, "Be careful Kakashi, she's a monster." Kakashi nodding said, "I will Kushina-senpai." He then jumping down started to go through hand signs and quickly created as many clones as he could. He dashing towards the river blurred through more hand signs and landing on Rat cried out, "Water style, water dragon jutsu." A huge dragon of water then appeared and launched directly at Shinjin, who to his great joy was actually pushed back by the jutsu. His clones soon joined in on the attack, pelting Shinjin with powerful water dragons that kept pushing her back. Shinjin growling at this opened her mouth and to the shock and horror of Kakashi unleashed a huge orange beam that wiped out a monumental part of the forest. Kakashi cursing kicked up his attack and started to hit her even more with water jutsu and now the occasional fire jutsu. He of course would have to dodge the beam from Shinjin and was hoping that he lasted long enough for Kushina to summon Lana. He gained wide eyes when Shinjin's massive right foot slammed down on his position and he barely switching with a log in time, literally heard the crunch of the log as it was crushed. He was so distracted by this log that he failed to see Shinjin's right hand heading towards him. He finally noticed a few seconds later, but it was too late. Shinjin wrapped him in her hand and brought him to her face. She with an evil smirk on her face said, "I've got you now." She then started to squeeze Kakashi, who could feel every bone in his body breaking. He actually had no choice but to scream out in agony. Kushina having enough chakra to summon Lana, flinched hearing Kakashi agonizing screams. She blurring through hand signs slammed her open hands down and cried out, summoning jutsu. A huge poof of smoke occurred, making Shinjin cut her eyes to the smoke. When the smoke cleared, Kushina could be seen standing on the muzzle of a giant dark brown wolf with an eye patch. This wolf was the boss summon of the wolf summons and her name was Lana. Lana spotting Shinjin whistled and said, "Damn Kushi-chan. I don't know how you happen to be fighting in Uzaru, but I do know this is one damn tough fight." Kushina blinking asked, "You know what that thing is?" Lana chuckling said, "Of course I do. I was just a little puppy when the last Saiyan was killed." She transformed into an Uzaru to try and fight off her enemies. She ended up dying, but killed her enemies before she did so. Kushina quickly asked, "How do we defeat it?" Lana snorting said, "We cut off its tail or destroy whatever made it transform." Kushina hearing this knew that cutting off the tail was out. She sliding her eyes to the ball Shinjin had created said, "That glowing ball over there is how it became the way it is right now." Lana cutting her eyes to the ball said, "Oh shit. It transformed with the help of the Blutzwave ball, you really are in trouble Kushina. That damn thing can't be destroyed and can only wear off." Kushina hearing this groaned and asked, "How long will that take?" Lana said, "From the looks of it, you have about an hour left." Kushina cursed hearing this and then blinked when the bored Shinjin squeezed Kakashi again, making the man once again scream out in pain. Kushina scowling said, "We have to battle it, Lana, or else Kakashi will die." Lana smirking said, "I was hoping you would say something like that." She then charged towards Shinjin with Kushina on her muzzle. Everyone in Konoha and in heaven was watching this battle with bated breath, wondering what the outcome was going to be. Lana and Kushina dashing towards Shinjin gained wide eyes when the ape jumped into the air while still holding Kakashi. She applying pressure to her fist smirked when Kakashi screamed in agony. She landing said, "Oh look a doggy." She tossing Kakashi over her shoulder and ignoring when the man collided with the top of a tree asked, "Wanna play doggy?" Lana hearing herself be called a dog twice growled and said, "Big stupid ape. I'm gonna enjoy taking a chunk out of you." Shinjin smiling dashed forward and tried to punch the wide-eyed Lana, who barely managed to duck under the punch. Kushina still on Lana's muzzle created a powerful water jutsu and hit Shinjin's arm with it. Lana then latched onto said arm making Shinjin cry out in actual pain. She trying to shake Lana off of her said, "Bad doggy." She still trying to shake Lana off growled and opened her mouth to unleash a ki beam from her mouth. Lana sensing this let go and rolled to the left, just as the attack was released once again obliterating a portion of the forest. Lana then tackled Shinjin forcing her back and further away from the village. Kushina blurring through hand signs cried out, "Water style, water trumpet jutsu." Lana howling unleashed a huge bolt of lightning that went barreling towards the just standing up Shinjin, who shrieked in pain when the attack landed. Shinjin now having burnt fur had an angry snarl on her face. She roaring shocked Kushina and Lana when she shrouded herself in an aura of sickly yellow energy. Kushina remembering this from her clones said, "Lana, we need to get back." Lana nodding jumped back just as Shinjin exploded obliterating a huge portion of the forest around her and barely being out of the reach of Kakashi, who was laid out against a tree, most of the bones in his body broken and his Sharingan eyes shut. Shinjin standing in the falling debris was completely healed shocking Kushina and Lana. She setting her eyes on the duo laughed and said, "Fools, that wasn't the almighty explosion of the orb of hell, it was the divine absorption of the orb of heaven. It healed me of all of my injuries and got rid of any soreness that was plaguing my body." Kushina hearing this cursed loudly as if what Shinjin is saying is true, then Shinjin was right back at prime condition. She blinked when Shinjin said, "You have 20 minutes left." She then to the shock of Lana and Kushina literally vanished and the next thing Lana knew she was sailing over the tops of a many trees, with Kushina barely hanging on. Shinjin appeared was now cloaked in a silver shroud of energy. Her large red eyes revealed no intelligence, but pure unrestrained power. Lana getting to her feet asked, "What the hell just happened, Kushina?" Kushina climbing onto Lana's head said, "The hell if I know." Shinjin roaring shocked Lana and Kushina when she unleashed a giant orange beam towards the two of them. Kushina thinking quickly slapped a seal down on Lana's muzzle and cried out, "Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Shield of the Ancients Jutsu." A huge blue barrier then appeared and blocked the massive attack, but shook the area around it. Shinjin roaring again unleashed this attack 10 more times, until she vanished again, just as the barrier dropped. Kushina panting heavily said, "Shit, she actually managed to drain the shield of the ancients." Lana knowing that Kushina was most likely tired was about to say something when her instincts screamed at her to jump back. She doing so gained wide eyes when Shinjin appeared above her and unleashed a deadly combo on the air and trees. Shinjin landing roared once more and started to pound on her chest. Lana blinked wondering what this was about while Kushina spotting Kakashi on the ground created a clone to send Kakashi to the summon realm in a scroll until the battle was over. Lana then noticed that Shinjin seemed to be trying to do something. She narrowing her eyes gained wide eyes when Shinjin actually shrunk about 2 feet. Lana then realized what Shinjin was doing. Smirking she said, "Kushina, she's forcing herself to return back to her more human form." Kushina hearing this blinked and actually looked at Shinjin who had shrunk 10 more feet. Kushina blinking again gained wide eyes as Shinjin was nearly back to human size. She jumping down watched as slowly Shinjin lost all of the fur and returned to a human-like form. Shinjin screaming, roaring once again became cloaked in the silver energy from before. This silver energy quickly started to grow, and like when Naruto and Ashley had first charged up, the ground started to tremble. The sky started to darken and debris started to float. Unlike when Naruto and Ashley had first charged up, a sense of pure unrestrained dread started to flood the air. Around Shinjin the grass and trees actually started to wilt. Shinjin, still powering up, finally reached what she had been grasping for. She ended her screaming just as a bright light covered her body. Kushina, with her sword ready, was waiting for whatever came out of the light. Lana, staring at the light, knew what the power Shinjin had been charging up was and wondered if the Saiyan could actually harness and use it. When the light died down, Kira in heaven gained the biggest smile in the universe. Aki gasped. Michelle smiled like her aunt. Gabriella quirked an eyebrow. Rachel gasped like her mother, and Lucifer licked her lips. Standing there was a severely changed Shinjin. Poking out of her forehead was thick silver horns that seemed to shine with malice. Her skin was now snow white and not a single blemish could be seen. Her eyes were mix-matched, as one was a darker tone of silver than before, while the other was the same gold as Kira's. Poking out from her mouth, large sharp fangs could be seen. Her arms and legs was covered by silver fur that had small skulls weaved into them. Behind her were skeletal wings that glowed with a supernatural light and seemed to be trying to suck the life and light out of the very air. Her hands were actual bones, and shrouded in a layer of darkness. Swaying behind her was her Saiyan tail, that was of course silver like her fur and hair now. The most alarming change about Shinjin was that insanity could no longer be seen shining in her eyes. Shinjin, spotting Kushina, let out a laugh that made Kushina feel very hot and Lana to whimper. Kushina asked, "What did you do?" Shinjin, still laughing, said, "You have 10 minutes left, Kushina, and for this last 10 minutes I am going to use the power of Death Force. In case you didn't know, this force is inside of every single living being in small doses, with people who have come close to death on many times having large amounts in them. Normally it's impossible for any living being to harness said power, but I have an abnormal amount of said power inside of me due to being the child of the goddess of death. Thus it is not only my right, but my destiny to be able to tap into and use the power of Death Force. Don't worry, Kushina, I'm still only using 15% of my power. In fact, I'll even drop it down to 10%. Kushina, hearing this, narrowed her eyes and asked, "Why would you drop it down?" Shinjin, laughing again, said, "Simple, Uzumaki-san. If I were to use 15% of my full power with this flowing through me, I'd kill you within 5 seconds flat, and those 3 weaklings you foolishly tethered to your lifeline would become part of my death force. At 10% I should be able to defeat you without killing you." Kushina, hearing this, was about to say something when Lana said, "She's right, Kushina. The death force is the very energy that allows Shinigami-sama to extract a soul from a body without having to fight for it. It's also the energy that Kami-sama places inside of every living thing, so that you can be judged when you die." Kushina, hearing this, gained wide eyes. She, sighing, said, "Thanks, Lana, you can go back now." Lana, nodding, said, "Be careful, Kushina." She then vanished in a poof of smoke. Kushina, once Lana was gone, put her sword down and dropped into the taijutsu style of her clan. The swirling fist. Shinjin, spotting this, dropped into her own style, well, more like the first of the 13 disciplines of death. Shinjin, surging death force through her body, said, "Be happy, as this is the first discipline of death. It's the easiest of the 13 and was taught to me by my cousin Rachel. It is called Shinzo Kekken no cardiovascular, and as you can imagine it is very taxing on both the victims and the user's cardiovascular system." Kushina, hearing this, said, "Well, it sounds like I need to avoid being hit and I will have you at a disadvantage." Shinjin, chuckling, said, "Yes, be optimistic, Uzumaki, and maybe you won't get hurt too bad." Shinjin then blurred towards Kushina, who barely managed to dodge to the left. Kushina, coming forward with a punch of her own, watched as Shinjin not only deflected her punch, but kicked Kushina in the calf. This forced Kushina to the ground, where she rolled and tried to sweep Shinjin's legs out from under her. Shinjin, jumping over this attempt, turned and kicked Kushina directly in the center of her chest. Kushina, sliding from the force behind the kick, flipped to her feet and reaching into her pockets tossed out several kunai and shuriken. Shinjin spotting this did 2 backflips avoiding the sharp projectiles. Kushina rushed forward while Shinjin was in mid-flip and actually managed to land a powerful kick to Shinjin's stomach, forcing the fusion to the ground. Shinjin smiling shocked Kushina when she using her tail as a spring grabbed both of Kushina's legs and brought her legs up. Kushina was then kicked in both breasts before Shinjin flipped all the way over and tossed Kushina towards a tree. Kushina replacing herself with a log rubbed her breast as those kicks had hurt. She blurring through hand signs opened her mouth wide and said, "Water style, water cannon jutsu." Shinjin hearing this blurred her own hand signs and to the shock of Kushina cried out, "Hyeten, Jack Frost's breath jutsu." As expected, Kushina's water cannon was quickly frozen solid and the temperature dropped severely. Kushina shaking her shock off charged at Shinjin and tried to punch the fusion in the jaw. Shinjin gracefully dodging this attack, kneed Kushina in the stomach, making Kushina fall to her knees and cough up air. Shinjin spotting this capitalized and kicked Kushina hard in the chest, forcing the Uzumaki woman to lean up and grab her chest. Shinjin spotting this, kicked Kushina's hands and chest, and did so repeatedly. With each kick that landed, Kushina screamed in pain and Shinjin's smile grew. Shinjin ending the kicking session, turned around and wrapped her tail around Kushina's throat. She then using her strength tossed the Uzumaki across the clearing. Kushina landing struggled to her feet. She shaking the cobwebs in pain off looked Shinjin directly in the eyes determined to not lose. Shinjin spotting this smiled softly and said, "You are very impressive Kushina Uzumaki and have impressed both sides of me. In fact you have impressed them so much, they decided to show the utmost respect a elite Saiyan warrior can give to another warrior." She looking up and closing her eyes waited until Kushina asked, "What is that?" She smiling softly said, "A painless and noble defeat." Shinjin then gaining a serene smile on her face said, "Therefore I am going to defeat you with a very special move that will make this victory all the better." Shinjin then vanished and for some reason everything went pitch black. The sound of flesh being hit could then be heard, along with several moans. When the darkness finally cleared up, Kushina was laid out on the ground, a blissful look on her face and her top missing revealing her sore red breast. Shinjin standing a few feet from Kushina had a clear substance on her 2 fingers. Glowing in the middle of her forehead the kanji for pleasure could be seen. Shinjin sticking her 2 fingers in her mouth pulled them out and said, "The ultimate pleasure." Flashing orgasm finger. Jaws literally dropped hearing this and Jiraiya who had been in the village instantly started making plans on learning this attack. Shinjin giggling said, "You taste scrumptious Kushina-san." After she said this the fusion wore off and Naruto and Ashley appeared. Naruto shaking his head turned and gave Ashley a deadpan look. Ashley whistling an innocent tune asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Naruto said, "We were supposed to just knock her out, not do something perverted." Ashley still whistling innocently said, "I have no clue what you're talking about." Naruto still giving the girl a deadpan look said, "Sure you don't." An hour later and Kushina finally started to come out of her daze. She groaning sat up and rubbed her head trying to recall what happened. She remembering gained an atomic blush and quickly covered her chest. She hearing munching blinked and looked to find Naruto sitting beside Ashley, a bowl of hot ramen in his hand, and Ashley who was eating a rabbit raw. Naruto noticing that she was awake said, "Welcome back to the land of the conscious." Kushina asked, "How long was I out?" Ashley taking a break from her rabbit said, 2 hours. Kushina's eyes nearly popped out of her head hearing this. She standing and then wobbling quickly summoned Riku, who gave her both scrolls and vanished. She unrolling both scrolls summoned all 3 of the people she had sealed. She flinched spotting the state Kakashi was in while Ashley snorted. Naruto rolling his eyes knowing what said snort meant snapped his fingers and Kushina gained wide eyes when all 3 people was fully healed and Kakashi woke up. She turning to look at Naruto with wide eyes asked, "How did you?" Ashley said, "We both have the sister power of death force flowing through us, and he has managed to learn how to heal people using this power. That's how." Kakashi standing to his feet asked, "Did we pass the test? Did Kushina-senpai defeat Shinjin?" Naruto sighing said, "Yes, you passed the test, but only because Kushina-san earned our respect. No, she didn't defeat Shinjin and you are still idiot sensei." Kakashi's eyebrow instantly started to twitch hearing this. Kushina ignoring this woke Sasuke and Sakura up. Sasuke once awake glared at Naruto and said, "Dobi, I demand you give me your power. Only an elite like myself deserves power like that." Ashley rolling her eyes along with Naruto said, "Shut the hell up you arrogant emo wannabe Avenger. Kami hearing you bitch so much makes me wish that Itachi had killed you weak ass when he killed the rest of your filthy clan." All eyes except for Naruto's widened hearing this and Sasuke started to shake with anger. Naruto sighing said, "That was uncalled for Ashley. If the dumb ass wants to hold on to the past and harbor hatred for his older brother, who was an Anbu by the age of 13, then let him do so. Frankly, I don't give two flying shits, just as long as he doesn't get in my way." Sasuke, now shaking with rage, roared and charged at Naruto and Ashley. This of course ended up with him receiving a double slap by both of their tails, sending him flying towards a tree. A loud crack was heard when Sasuke met the trunk of the tree and the boy was once again unconscious. Sakura, of course forgetting the literal ass kicking she got earlier from the two Saiyans, screeched and tried to hit Naruto. She, like Sasuke, was slapped by a tail, and landed in a heap on top of the Uchiha. Naruto snorting said, "Fucking idiots, the both of them." Ashley nodding said, "No arguments here." Kushina and Kakashi both had huge sweat drops on the back of their heads and wondered what the hell was wrong with Sasuke and Sakura. The next day, Naruto could be seen literally sitting in the air as below Sasuke and Sakura painted a very old and metal fence. This was the third mission of today and it was nothing but a menial chore that Naruto refused to do. Ashley had also refused to do them also and was off hunting something somewhere. Kakashi had tried to force Naruto to paint the fence, but Naruto had reminded Kakashi that Kakashi still wasn't worthy and Naruto didn't have to listen to a single word that the man said. Kakashi after hearing this had mumbled and went back to reading his smut. Kushina didn't say anything to Naruto, because honestly she agreed with him that this was nothing but menial chores that the civilians were too lazy to do, so they hired Genin to do for them. Sakura wiping her large forehead glared up at Naruto and said, "Naruto baka, get down here and paint." Naruto, ignoring the pink-haired girl, was tracking Ashley as the panther stalked a rather plump member of the civilian council. The man hadn't even realized that Ashley was stalking him or how close to death he was. Naruto had actually ordered this hit, after discovering that the man and his brothers had been using the Shinjin name to have their way with young boys and girls. This man in particular was fond of 8-year-old girls and this absolutely disgusted and pissed Naruto off. Sakura, noticing that Naruto was ignoring her, got angry and screeched, "Naruto baka, get down here and help us paint this old ugly fence right now." Naruto, still ignoring Sakura, was counting the seconds until Ashley pounced on the man and killed the pedophile. Sakura, now seeing red, picked up the paint can and chucked it at Naruto, thinking that it would hit him. Naruto, moving his head to the left, not only dodged the paint can but made Sakura hit Ino with said paint can, covering the blonde-haired girl in white paint. Ino, now covered in white paint, was furious beyond belief. She, with flames in her eyes, took off in the direction the can came from. Shikamaru and Choji quickly followed the blonde-haired girl. Asuma, sighing, followed after his students. Ino, spotting Sakura and Sasuke standing beside a half-painted fence, clenched her fist as Sakura had another paint can and was about to throw it into the air. Ino, blurring forward, grabbed said can, turned it upside down and emptied the contents on Sakura, who screamed. This got the attention of Sasuke, Kakashi and Kushina. Sakura, now coated in white paint, glared at Ino and asked, "What the hell did you do that for, pig?" Ino, glaring at Sakura, said, "Because you got white paint all over me, and nearly ruined the puppies my team was hired to clean." Sakura, hearing this, screeched, "So you pour paint all over me because you didn't want some stupid little dogs to get dirty?" Ino, now pissed, said, "Yes, you pink-haired troll. My team was paid to wash the puppies and I'll be damned if I let a pink-haired menace like you ruin my mission." Naruto, now interested, was looking down and listening to what had just been said. Sakura, shaking with rage, wound up and went to punch Ino in the jaw, when Ino, actually making Naruto smile, kicked Sakura directly in the stomach, forcing Sakura to bend over. Ino, hitting Sakura's head with her right elbow, forced Sakura to the ground. Ino, grabbing Sakura's long hair, forced the pink-haired girl to her knees and said, "You pink-haired idiot. I'm much better than you, and unlike you and those other girls, I take my training seriously. Sakura, glaring at Ino, was about to say something when clapping could be heard. All eyes moved to Naruto, who was the one clapping. He, with a smile on his face, said, "Very well done, Yamanaka. You not only put the pink-haired weakling in her place, but you proved my point that she's in complete failure as a kunoichi." He, sitting down on the ground, shifted his eyes to the fence and stared at it. All eyes widened when the fence was completely coated in a white. He, shifting his eyes to Ino, stared at her like he had the fence, and once again eyes widened when Ino was clean of the white paint and looking like she had taken a shower before coming to confront Sakura. Naruto, nodding, turned to the wide-eyed Kakashi and Kushina. He, rolling his eyes, asked, "Are we done here, idiot, Kushina?" Kakashi, shaking his head, started to blabber and stutter. Kushina, shaking her own head, said, "I guess we are." Naruto, nodding, said, "Good, as I would like to speak with Yamanaka, if that is all right with her." Ino, blinking, let Sakura go and said, "It's fine with me just as long as Asuma-sensei doesn't mind." Naruto, snorting, turned to look at Asuma and with a dangerous glint in his eyes asked, "Is that all right with you, Asuma-san?" Asuma, gulping audible, said, "Yes, it's fine with me. I was going to dismiss you three after this mission anyway." Naruto, hearing this, turned back to look at Ino and said, "Now that is settled, come with me, Yamanaka. What I wish to speak with you about should be in the confines of my own home." Ino, nodding, followed Naruto and said, "You can call me Ino, as Yamanaka is just my clan name." Naruto, chuckling, said, "Ino it is then." The next week, Naruto was sitting in a branch petting a rather sweet brown and white cat, ignoring the two idiots he was forced to be on a team with chasing after an illusion. It was downright hilarious, as the team had been given the capture Tora mission and Naruto had easily tracked the cat down and picked her up. The cat had instantly started to purr in his arms, and started to do so louder when he started to pet her. Ashley had come along and was looking at Tora with jealous eyes, as Naruto used to pet her like that. Now he barely petted her, but then again he did feed her copious amounts of food and let her hunt down and kill people in the village, so maybe she shouldn't be jealous. Naruto had, after capturing Tora, used a power of Excalibur and cast a powerful illusion on both idiots on his team and had watched them chase after an illusionary cat for over 2 hours now. He had laughed for the first 30 minutes, but now found it truly pathetic. He, sighing, dropped the illusion and watched as Sasuke and Sakura shook the remains of the illusion off. Sakura, looking around, asked, "Where did that stupid cat go?" Naruto, rolling his eyes, coughed, alerting both idiots to his position. They both blinked, spotting him holding a sleeping Tora. Naruto, standing up, said, "You two are truly pathetic and most likely will always be this way." He, turning around, started to fly towards the mission tower with the two idiots struggling to keep up with him, of course Sakura throwing out curses and screams along the way. When the four of them arrived at the mission tower, Naruto dropped down to the ground. He, setting the still sleeping Tora on Ashley's back, walked into the tower, knowing that Ashley was right behind him. The four of them, walking up the stairs, reached the mission tower. Naruto, opening it, rolled his eyes, spotting Kakashi standing in the corner reading his smut, while Kushina glared at the man for doing so. Sarutobi was sitting at the desk along with Iruka, who looked like he had an headache. Naruto, spotting the owner of Tora, gently handed the cat to the woman and instantly snatched the cat back when the woman started to squeeze the poor cat to death. Naruto, sending a potent glare at the woman, said, "That is not how you make a cat feel loved." He, setting Tora down on Ashley's back, said, "Until you properly learn how to take care of an animal, I will be keeping Tora-chan." The woman, hearing this, said, "You can't do that. I'm the Fire Lord's wife," and she was cut off by Naruto, who said, "I don't give a damn who you are. Until you learn how to care for an animal, you are not getting Tora back, and if your husband has a problem with that, tell him he can discuss the issue with Naruto Shinjin." The woman, hearing his last name, blanched and, shocking everyone besides her guards, dropped down into a low bow and said, "Lord Shinjin, please forgive my foolishness. I didn't mean to question your judgment." Naruto, quirking an eyebrow, asked, "Why exactly did you change your tune so quickly?" She, gulping, said, "Lady Akira Shinjin is the rightful owner of all of Fire Country, and she informed us that you are her son." Naruto, hearing this and ignoring the widening of the eyes in the room, said, "She commanded you to treat me with the utmost respect or she'd kill you all, or something along those lines." The woman nodded. Naruto, sighing, said, "She is a very troublesome woman, and makes it very hard to make fools respect me for the things I have done. He, looking at the still bowing woman, said, "All right, this is what I'm going to do. You have exactly 1 month to learn how to treat Tora, or she will permanently be removed from your possession and placed under my care. If at the end of a month you have shown yourself capable of taking care of Tora properly, she will be given back to you." The woman, nodding, said, "I will try my best, Lord Shinjin." She and her guards then left the room. Naruto, turning to look at the crying enjoyed Tora, rolled his eyes and said, "Don't get too excited, Tora. As for the month that you're under my care, you will be training with myself and Ashley. In fact, in order to get you in better condition, you will come with us into the chamber." Everyone instantly noticed how Ashley started to chuckle with vile intentions. Hiruzen, coughing, said, "All right, Team 7, let's get you another mission." He, going towards the D-ranked missions, blinked when Sasuke said, "I demand you give me a better mission so that I can unlock my Sharingan and finally put the Dobi in his rightful place." Sakura, like the loyal dog she is, nodded and said, "Yeah, give Sasuke-kun a better mission so he can finally defeat Naruto Baka." Kakashi's sweat dropped and wondered what the hell was wrong with these two. Kushina, shaking her head, knew exactly what was wrong with the two, as Naruto had been saying it all along. Iruka, shaking his head, launched into a long-winded speech about what D-ranked missions were for and some other stuff. He blinked, finding Naruto and a Saiyan form, Ashley playing poker, Sasuke scowling, Sakura pestering Sasuke, Kakashi reading his book, Kushina polishing her sword, and Sarutobi reading his own book. Iruka, with a twitching eyebrow, asked, "Is anyone even listening to me?" Ashley, pushing all of her chips up, turned to him and asked, "I'm sorry, did you say something?" Iruka, now with both of his eyebrows twitching and several tick marks on his forehead, understood how Guy must feel when Kakashi did that to him. Kushina, looking Sarutobi, said, "I say we give them a C rank, it's not like they can't handle it. Plus with me and Kakashi there, it will be just fine." Hiruzen, putting his book away, reached for the C rank pile and, looking the scroll over, said, "All right, your mission is to the country of Wave and you are to escort Tazuna the bridge builder home safely." Tazuna then walked in and blinked, spotting the protection he paid good money for. As you can imagine, he wasn't pleased with what he was seeing. He, turning to Sarutobi, asked, "Is this what I paid for? I thought I was getting a team of ninja, not a confused pink-haired boy, and brooding emo avenger, and a cyclops." Naruto, laughing, said, "2 of the 3 you just insulted are weaklings, while the last one is a pure idiot." Tazuna, turning to look at Naruto, gained wide eyes and bowed, saying, "Lord Shinjin." Naruto and everyone else blinked hearing him say this. Naruto quickly asked, "How do you know who I am?" Tazuna, still bowing lowly, said, "Lady Michelle visited my country nearly a year ago after a terrible personal tragedy hit my family. My daughter was about to kill herself when Lady Michelle told her to be patient, as her dearest little cousin would come to our country and Wave would bear witness to his ascent into Super Saiyan." Naruto, hearing this, blinked and said, "Well, seeing as Michelle has future vision, then I guess I'll be reaching Super Saiyan status soon." Ashley, with a smirk on her face, said, "Great, soon our fusions will have a new level of power." Naruto, nodding, was about to say something when a scroll literally dropped from the very air directly into his hands. He, blinking, looked at the scroll and gained wide eyes, recognizing the handwriting of his aunt. He, opening the scroll, read its contents and then handed the scroll to Ashley for her to read. Ashley, once finished reading the scroll, burned it and started to laugh loudly. She, stopping her laughter, asked, "Oi, Kushina-sensei, how do you feel about a mission from Kami herself to end the bloodline purges in Kirigakure?" Kushina and everyone in the room all gained wide eyes, and Kushina asked, "Is that what was in the scroll?" Naruto, snorting, said, "Technically it was a kill order on Yagura the 4th Mizuki and all those loyal to him, but it can be considered ending the pointless bloodshed plaguing Kirigakure." Kushina, hearing this, said, "I would be honored." Ashley, smiling, said, "Good, as the reward for you is a legendary sword like father has." Kushina, blinking, asked, "Which sword?" Naruto, closing his eyes and looking out the window, said, "Soanga, the lost sword of the great dog demon." Everyone in the room gained wide eyes hearing this, as that sword had been sought out by many people seeking its massive power. Kushina, with a dry mouth, asked, "How?" Ashley, giggling, said, "Kami has had it this entire time." Naruto, ignoring the shock, said, "Enough talk. Go pack, all of you. My Saiyan blood is boiling." Everyone, nodding, quickly left to go pack. none of them spotting a shadow vanishing behind a portrait. The next morning, Naruto with Ashley in human form was standing at the gate, a bored look on his face. Ashley was munching on the leg of some poor animal that had become her breakfast. Both of them were dressed in classic but modified Saiyan armor. Naruto didn't have the shoulder pads. Ashley had one shoulder pad and it looked to have been chewed on. Naruto had Excalibur attached to his right hip, and his Saiyan tail was wrapped tightly around his body. Ashley had a golden pair of daggers sitting on each hip and her Saiyan tail was swaying behind her. The two of them were actually early, as Naruto's Saiyan blood wouldn't let him sleep a minute longer than he needed to, as it was itching for a good fight. Ashley's Saiyan blood was in a similar state, as she had slaughtered the rest of the pedophiles using the Shinjin name before coming here, while Naruto had just watched this event with a bored look on his face. He had actually ignored some of the fools pleading for him to stop Ashley. So here they were waiting for the rest of their team to arrive. Of course Naruto wasn't leaving Tora alone in the home, as he had recruited his 3 little Saiyans in training and Ino to train the cat and had even given them access to the chamber. Thinking about the chamber made Naruto chuckle as all 4 people had been introduced to the chamber and the only one actually used it was little Konohamaru. The brat wanted to be just like Naruto and didn't back down from any challenge. When Naruto had first met the brat, he had dismissed the boy and called him low-class trash. The boy had then challenged Naruto to a battle every day since then, and Naruto had started to grow to respect and like the boy, until one day Konohamaru's punk-ass instructor tried to reprimand Konohamaru for bothering him. Naruto had quickly fixed that situation and told Ebisu that Konohamaru wasn't bothering him, but he was actually getting ready to start Konohamaru on the path of the Elite Saiyan. Ebisu had quickly tried to talk Naruto out of it, but ended up being hit in the face by a blue rose special. The man's face was still slightly blue and rumor had it mouth had several ulcers in it. Konohamaru had afterwards asked him if he had been serious and Naruto had smirked and said, "Welcome future Saiyan warrior to the first day of your new life." Since then he had been training the boy to the ground and unlocked the boy's ki. He had actually laughed his ass off when he taught Konohamaru how to fly as the boy kept crashing into trees. The other 2 twerps came in the picture one day after Konohamaru revealed to him that he needed his help. Naruto had agreed and followed Konohamaru to a training ground where a couple of idiots had been picking on a group of kids. Konohamaru had told the idiots to stop or else. The idiots had then tried to attack Kono and Naruto had reacted. Naruto beat the idiots so bad, the idiots were still in the hospital getting checked out. The 2 twerps had then thanked him and begged to be trained. Naruto looking at both of them instantly saw the potential they had and agreed. All 3 kids could now easily take down a Chunin using only their ki. Hell, Konohamaru could most likely face a Jonin for about 5 minutes before passing out or being defeated. He had, after watching Ino teach the useless pink-haired idiot on his team a lesson, started to train the girl in the Ansatsuken as he could easily detect the weaknesses in her old style. He had also unlocked her ki and even started her on awakening her mana. He knew that Ino was going to be a monster with mana and could hardly wait until she started creating attacks with her mana. Of course he was also a monster with his mana, but he preferred to use his ki, chakra, the force and death force. Karma, mana, biotics, kai, reshi, and life force focused more on healing and he didn't really care for healing as his Saiyan Zenkai made him stronger with each defeat, to be specific each near-death experience. Of course he did have the absolute strongest healing factor for a mortal with Ashley coming in close second and the Uzumaki coming in third. In fact the only beings who had a better healing factor than him was his mother, aunt and cousins. That's because they are immortal beings, who don't age or die. He could still die and was definitely aging. Shaking his head he noticed the weak pink-haired one arriving. He and Ashley both rolled their eyes spotting the huge pack she was carrying, knowing that most if not all of that was useless on a mission. Naruto cutting his eyes to Ashley was asking if she cared enough or not. She replied with the answer that she didn't and could actually care less. Chuckling he went back to thinking. 5 minutes later and the brooding idiot arrives, actually looking ready for a mission. Naruto and Ashley both nodded at the boy as he was less of an idiot than they thought. Naruto cutting his eyes to the left watched as Kushina arrived looking ready for war. He actually looking her over could see that the armor that she had on was good, but would fail much sooner than later. Shaking his head, he said, Ashley, give her armor set 4, and decrease the gravity and weight seals by 10. Ashley, nodding, rolled up her sleeve to reveal a seal. She, applying chakra to the seal, unsealed a copy of Bardock's armor, with the exception being the royal insignia of the Shinjin clan being on the breastplate. She, walking over to the wide-eyed Kushina, handed her the armor and said, consider yourself an honorary member of the Saiyan race and the Shinjin clan. This armor can take a full-powered galaxy breaker from father and only crack. It should protect you perfectly. Kushina, blinking, accepted the armor and asked, how powerful is this galaxy breaker? Ashley, feeling Kakashi arrive with Tazuna, smirked, knowing that a lot of people was listening, and said, a full-powered galaxy breaker from father is equal to 10,000-tailed beast ball and could shatter this world and universe 15 times over. She laughed when eyes bulged, jaws scraped the ground, and several people shit their pants. Naruto, shaking his head, said, stop gawking, idiot sensei, and set the pink-haired idiot straight. Kakashi, with both of his eyebrows twitching, walked over to the now pissed Sakura and started to set the girl straight. Kushina, going behind a tree, slipped the new armor on and asked, do you really think this armor is necessary? Naruto, staring at the horizon with a smirk on his face, said, yes, as my dear cousin has predicted my ascension into Super Saiyan status, meaning that something we face on this mission will push me past my current limitations. Ashley, nodding, said, my tail is also itching, and it hasn't done that since my real parents were killed by those hunters. Something big and bad is going to happen. Kushina, hearing this, was curious and asked, this Super Saiyan status, what is it? Ashley, smiling, said, proof that a Saiyan is meant for greatness, or is at least among the powerful. Naruto, closing his eyes, said, enough talk. Since everyone is now ready, we move out. He then moved forward, knowing that Ashley, now focused, fell in step right beside him. Kakashi, with twitching eyebrows, said, Sasuke, Sakura, fall in line and guard Tazuna. Sasuke, scowling, moved to guard Tazuna, with a furious Sakura doing the same. Kushina, sighing, looked down at her armor and said, here we go. Team 7's first C-rank mission. She then walked out of the gate following Kakashi. A day later, and we can find Naruto and Ashley staring at a puddle down the road with deadpan eyes. Ashley, turning to Kushina, asked, are they serious? Kushina and Kakashi, sweat-dropping, asked, what do you mean? Naruto, rolling his eyes, said, don't play dumb with us, Kushina. We know you noticed those two idiots. Know those two morons hiding in that simply pathetic and asinine genjutsu down the road. Kakashi, blinking, asked, why did you say don't play dumb with us, Kushina, but not me? Ashley, snorting, said, you're not playing, you really are that dumb idiot sensei. Kakashi's eyebrows started to twitch and he was dangerously close to attacking Ashley. Kushina, ignoring Kakashi, sighed and said, we were trying to figure out who they were after. Naruto, hearing this, said, it's actually obvious who they're after. Ashley, nodding, said, they're after Tazuna, who obviously lied about the mission details and rank. My guess is that his country or village is under the thumb of some short tyrant who either did a public execution or has a huge army of hired goons that keep his country or village under his control. Naruto, noticing Tazuna's flinch, said, it was the execution from the flinch, and it was most likely someone close to the old drunk. My guess is a son or son-in-law. Ashley, spotting Tazuna's double flinch, said, son-in-law, and if my gut is right, there was another execution and it was again someone close to Tazuna. Most likely a grandchild, which would make sense as he did mention that Michelle Oni stopped his daughter from killing herself after a personal tragedy. Tazuna now had tears in his eyes. Naruto, narrowing his eyes at this, snorted and aimed his right hand at the puddle. He, pumping his ki through his body, said, observe and behold the might of one of the only mortal Shinjin and prince of all Saiyans. Ashley, smirking, aimed her hand at the puddle also and said, make that both mortal Shinjin and both the prince and princess of all Saiyans. Both people, now having an enormous amount of ki flowing to their hands, said, die scum. Dark radiance, plasma wave. All eyes widened and Tazuna gasped when two gigantic beams of the darkest black fired out of their hands and slammed into the puddle. A huge explosion occurred and smoke literally filled the air. When it finally cleared, Tazuna took several steps back. Kakashi broke out into a cold sweat. Sasuke shook with jealousy. Sakura turned as white as snow, and Kushina did the perfect imitation of a fish. There was a gaping hole where the puddle had been and electricity could be seen sparking inside of said hole. Naruto lowering his hand shook his head and said, "Still needs work." Ashley pouting lowered her hand and said, "Damn, I thought we had it that time." Naruto looking Tazuna directly in the eyes said, "That Tazuna is the might of the Saiyans, and that move isn't even perfected yet." All eyes widened this time and Kakashi, Tazuna, Sakura and Kushina all thought, "That move isn't perfect. Dear sweet Kami, I don't want to see it when it is perfected." Sasuke on the other hand clenched his fist and thought, "Why does the Dobi and his stupid pet have so much power? I should have that power, not him. I'm the elite." Ashley stopping her pout snapped her fingers and healed the hole, making everyone gape. Naruto snorting said, "Life force and mana. Now stop gawking and come along." He then once again moved forward with a skipping Ashley following him. Tazuna shaking out of his shock quickly followed the two Saiyans, actually feeling hope fill his body as these two were extremely powerful. Kushina shaking her head followed the three thanking Kami that Naruto, Ashley and that monster Shinjin had only been using 15% of their full power, as if that attack was any indication there was much more power. Kakashi still sweating quickly ushered the still shocked Sakura and seething Sasuke forward, while thinking over his plan to make Ashley and Naruto respect him. 2 days later and Team 7 was sitting in a boat being slowly paddled across a large body of water in a dense mist. Naruto actually had his eyes closed, but his tail was swaying with excitement behind him as his Saiyan blood was now howling that a battle was coming up that would give him a proper test. Ashley sitting beside Naruto was licking her lips and clenching her fist as her Saiyan blood was doing the same as her father. She could feel the powerful battle that was coming up soon. Kushina looking at the two Saiyans could tell that they were excited about something, and if her gut was right she was about to witness some more of the mighty power of the Saiyans. Kakashi reading his smut was now fine with being idiot sensei and would accept the title with pride, as he knew now that challenging Naruto or Ashley was a death wish, and he liked living. Sakura was now deathly afraid of Naruto and Ashley as she knew that the two of them could kill her with a flick of their fingers and neither would feel a drop of remorse for doing so. To them she was a useless and weak idiot, who wouldn't even make a decent human shield. Sasuke was still seething at the power Naruto and Ashley had shown and was ready to demand to be given that power. Tazuna on the other hand was wondering how Gato would deal with the two Shinjin and if Wave would really bear witness to an ascension. The boat handler was looking at who Tazuna had confirmed to be Lord and Lady Shinjin with dubious eyes, not believing that the two 12-year-olds were as powerful as Lady Michelle had made them out to be. Naruto opening his eyes as they reached land stood up and said, "It's nearly time, Ashley." Ashley standing up with glowing golden eyes said, "I can't wait, father." Naruto turning to look Kakashi and Kushina directly in the eyes said, "A powerful opponent or opponents is somewhere near. My Saiyan blood can feel it. They are ours and if either of you even try to jump in." Ashley with cold gold eyes said, "You'll be wiped out from existence. No, not only will we kill you, but we'll eradicate your very presence from every possible universe, every possible existence, so that when you die here, every single version of you will die and cease to exist." Naruto focusing on Kushina said, "Sensei and honorary Saiyan or not, you will be removed from existence." He then turned around and started walking. Ashley eyes smiling at the shell shocked and terrified Kushina and Kakashi turned around and followed her father. Kakashi gulping said, "Understood." Kushina sighing said, "As you wish." The rest of Team 7 then followed the two Saiyans into the mist. Seconds later Naruto blasted a bush. Ashley looking at said bush said, "Two dead rabbits. Their fur is white meaning they were kept inside." Naruto smirking said, "Someone used the replacement jutsu." Both people hearing the air being sliced and footsteps smirked. Ashley lifting up her hand caught the handle of a very large blade that Kushina and Kakashi both recognized instantly. Naruto on the other hand, moved Excalibur's sheath to block a very heavy swing from another weapon Kushina and Kakashi both recognized. Naruto turning his head found himself staring Kisame Hoshigaki, the monster of the hidden mist directly in the eyes. Ashley smirking was looking Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the bloody mist directly in the eyes. Kisame smirking himself said, "Well, it looks like this kid has some good reflexes." Zabuza snorting said, "Girl, give me back my sword and I won't kill you." Ashley, gaining an insane look in her eyes, started to laugh with maniacal glee. Naruto, gaining a bloodthirsty smile on his face, said, "Let's go wild." Ashley, hearing him say this, started to laugh even louder, if that's possible. Suddenly the thick mist was literally blown away by two powerful surges of energy. These surges were coming from Ashley and Naruto. Naruto, still with that smile on his face, was unleashing pure focused ki that was making the sword in Kisami's hands scream in both agony and bliss. Ashley, still laughing, had the Kabikirabocho in her hands and was holding on tightly to it. Kisame, hearing the Samahata's screams, quickly tried to remove it, but gained wide eyes when he didn't even budge. Zabuza, on the other hand, was watching as cracks literally stared to appear on his sword and was getting very worried. Naruto, now cloaked in a huge aura of black ki, said, "Behold the might of the Prince of all Saiyans." He then literally flexed and Kisame was sent sailing backwards, crashing through several trees. Ashley, with a demented smirk on her face, said, "You want your sword? Here, catch it." She then, to Zabuza's shock and horror, tossed his sword at him with enough force to fell an elephant. He, replacing himself with a log, shit his pants when not only was the log obliterated, but the place it had been in was turned into a gaping hole. It was then that he noticed that his sword was once again back in Ashley's hands. Ashley, laughing loudly, said, "Yes, dodge, you little worm. Make this fun." She then exploded towards him, making Zabuza wonder what the hell had he gotten himself into. Naruto watched as his daughter, Pet, engaged Zabuza in battle with both a demented and proud smile on his face. He, slowly turning his head in the direction Kisame had been launched, and said, "This is exactly what I have been waiting for." He then, roaring, blasted towards Kisame. Kakashi, standing there in total shock, said, "In the name of all things Icha, those two are monsters." Kushina, trembling as she could actually feel the malice, contempt and insanity in both auras of ki, was terrified for her life. Sakura, shitting and pissing herself, finally realized that she was on a team that consisted of two absolute monsters, who could and very likely would kill her for even looking at them wrong. Sasuke was now beyond jealous, as the insane power Ashley and Naruto was showing should be his, as he was an elite and he needed power like that to kill Itachi. Tazuna was crying tears of joy, as Kami had answered his prayers and sent two powerhouses to save his country from Gato's tyranny. Zabuza, jumping back, watched as Ashley landed and made the very ground tremble. He, pushing his fear back, pulled out a scroll and unsealed his backup sword, since Ashley still had a death grip on Kabikirabocho. Ashley, spotting the backup sword, snorted and said, "You're not a real swordsman." Zabuza, hearing this, narrowed his eyes and asked, "What makes you say that?" She, setting Kabikirabocho on her shoulder, said, "A true swordsman never lets his sword fall in the opponent's hands and doesn't have a backup sword." Zabuza, hearing this, snorted and asked, "Who told you that bullshit?" Ashley, narrowing her eyes, said, "My father told me that when he mastered his sword." Zabuza, snorting, said, "Like I said, it's bullshit, and your father was not a true swordsman. He didn't know it, but he had just fucked up, badly." Ashley, now pissed beyond anything she'd ever felt before, roared and unleashed more of her power. The sky literally darkened and a huge aura of ki appeared around her. She, now with her large panther canine bared, said, "Don't you dare insult my father ever again, you filthy ninja." Zabuza, gulping, wondered if he had let his mouth sign a check his ass couldn't write. He then, bringing his backup sword up on pure instinct, felt the earth crumble underneath him when Ashley slammed the glowing Kabikirabocho down on it. He gained wide eyes, literally hearing his sword crack from the pure force behind Ashley's attack. He, looking the pissed-off princess of all Saiyans in the eyes, felt his soul chill, spotting the absolute righteous fury burning in her eyes, and the massive amount of power hidden in those eyes. Ashley, snarling, vanished, and Zabuza was barely able to jump over a crescent-shaped slash of energy from Kabikirabocho. He, landing, rolled in time to dodge a heavy swing from Ashley and gulped again when the ground below split. He, swinging with his backup sword, gained wide eyes when the sword cracked again as it literally bounced off of Ashley's skin. Ashley, snarling, swung again with the Kabikirabocho. Zabuza, ducking, jumped back and sighed, finding himself standing on a river. He, blurring through hand signs, said, "Water style, water dragon jutsu." Ashley, spotting the huge water dragon heading her way, snarled, lifted her left hand and said, "Impending nightmare." Zabuza felt his eyes widen when from her hand a purple ball of energy collided with his dragon and his dragon literally exploded. He dashing forward tried to punch Ashley but ended up being slapped by her tail. He crashing into a tree coughed up a copious amount of blood. He standing up blurred through hand signs and said, "Hidden mist jutsu." A thick mist then rolled in and Ashley snarled as her target had vanished. She clenching her fist was about to roar again when Naruto's voice said, "Ashley Nicole Shinjin. Calm down." Hearing this instantly made Ashley's eyes widened as her father only used her full name when he thought she was doing something wrong. Shaking her head she let the excess anger she had go. Feeling herself in a calmer state, she glared at the mist and said, "Well played Momochi. You pissed me off on purpose so that you could get your little mist up again." She smirking said, "No matter, this mist will fall along with you." Zabuza hiding in the mist wondered what the hell she was talking about until he suddenly felt a huge buildup of power. He then gained wide eyes when his mist started to be sucked in by a vacuum-like force. He then noticed that something was glowing in the mist. The mist then cleared and he took several steps back. The reason he did this? Ashley was now standing in the middle of a black and red maelstrom that was putting out so much energy he was sure they could feel it in Kirigakure. Ashley spotting him laughed with insane glee as she said, "Take this you wannabe demon." She then roaring pumped her ki into the chakra maelstrom making it triple in size in power and said, "Draconic maelstrom." The attack then gained the head of a massive intimidating dragon and came barreling at Zabuza, who was paralyzed with fear. The attack hit Zabuza dead on and the demon of the bloody mist screamed in pure agony. When the attack finished Zabuza crashed to the ground literally feet from Team 7 and Tazuna. Kushina with her jaw scraping the ground was damn sure she wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell against Ashley, Naruto or Shinjin if they were going full power. Zabuza barely moving said, "Haku." A person then appeared in a swirl of ice and grabbed the demon of the mist. They then vanished in the same fashion. Ashley landing and smelling someone else snorted and said, "That's right, run coward." Tazuna was now on his knees thanking Kami profusely as what he had just seen from Ashley was downright godly. Ashley turning to look at the section Naruto was battling Kisame and asked, "I wonder what's taking father so long." Naruto locked blades with Kisame could tell that Ashley had finished her battle and perfected Draconic Maelstrom. Smiling he jumped back. Kisame covered in cuts and gashes smirked and asked, "Why are you smiling, brat?" Naruto chuckling with amusement said, "The demon of the bloody mist was defeated." Kisame hearing this couldn't stop his eyes from widening as even he would admit Zabuza was one tough bastard. Naruto noticing the shock in Kisame's eyes chuckled some more and said, "Don't worry, soon you'll be joining him." Kisame narrowing his eyes asked, "What makes you so sure, brat?" Naruto smiling lifted Excalibur high into the air and said, "Because I'm done playing around with you." Kisame hearing this gained wide eyes and hoped that Naruto was bluffing. Naruto smiling said, "Bear witness to her power." He then closing his eyes said, "Centuries have passed since one has revealed himself. Cults have been the rise and fall of many of them. Some try to pretend to be one, others wish to be amongst them. All of them are wrong as only one can create one. Declare thy king, O blade of legend. Ascend Excalibur." A huge explosion of energy then shook the world and the sky darkened all across the elemental nations. Kisame feet from this explosion was using every ounce of strength in his body to keep Samahata in his hands. The smoke from the explosion then cleared and Kisame blanched. Naruto was now floating in the air, a crown sitting on his head. This crown was connected to a skull mask that covered Naruto's eyes and nose. Kisame then watched as armor appeared and literally covered Naruto's form. This armor was dark blue and Kisame could literally feel the power coming from it. Naruto now inside of Excalibur's Shikai sat down on the ground. He looking at the wide-eyed and pale Kisame said, "Behold the initial release of my lovely blade Excalibur." He then smirking not that Kisame could see it said, "I'm not done though." He clenching his fist tapped into the death force. Once again an explosion of energy happened, but this time instead of the sky darkening, a powerful sense of dread and looming death blanketed the entire world. Ashley basking in the aura said, "Father is tapping into the death force." The smoke once again cleared and Kisame shit himself. Most of the armor was now gone, leaving Naruto's upper body visible. His black hair had shifted to a bright silver. Said hair now had several skulls weaved into it, giving it a deadly look. None of this is what made Kisame shit himself. No, what had made him shit himself was the pair of golden eyes staring at him with apathy. Naruto smirking said, "Behold the face of your death, Kisame Hoshigaki." Naruto laughing with demented glee said, "Ka-sama has already signed your death certificate and Oba-sama has given me to go ahead to purge you from this world." He then, bringing his massive aura of energy forward, said, "Fear me, O monster of the hidden mist, for I have become death." Naruto then roared and Kisame found himself sailing through the trees, pain-racking his body. When he stopped crashing through trees, he was back where the battle had started. He, coughing up blood, struggled to his feet. Ashley, looking at him, smirked and said, "Oh yeah, father is about to kill you." Kisame, turning to her, gave her the finger and said, "I'm not going to die." He then stilled when the hollow and intimidating voice of Naruto asked, "Yes, you are." Kisame, quickly turning, swung Samahata, but gained wide eyes when Naruto knocked the attack away. Naruto, punching Kisame in the stomach, watched as the man lifted up from the ground. Naruto, kneeing the man in the face, watched as Samahata slowly fell from his hand. Naruto, punching He-Man in the chest, heard the ribs break. He then, kicking Kisame, watched the man roll towards the wide-eyed Sakura. Naruto, slowly walking towards the blue-skinned man, was building up ki in his right hand. Kisame, struggling to his knees, knew that his death was upon him and there was nothing that he could do about it. Naruto, now in front of the man, was about to blast the man, when he got a better idea. Crushing the ball of ki that had appeared in his hand, he grabbed the former swordsman by the throat and said, "Congratulations, Kisame. You will be the example for that slime known as Gato and the first of many to fall by the hands of the Saiyans." He then tossed Kisame high into the air. Naruto, pumping a gigantic amount of ki through his body, started to push it into his arms. Ashley, recognizing what he was doing, gained wide eyes and asked, "Kushina-san?" Kushina, looking at Naruto, said, "Yes." Ashley, still looking at her father, asked, "Remember how I told you that the Galaxy Breaker was one of my father's most powerful attacks?" Kushina, nodding, asked, "Yes, why?" Ashley, licking her lips, said, "Father is about to demonstrate another one right here, right now." Kushina, hearing this, wasn't the only one to gain wide eyes. Kushina, quickly pulling out a seal, slapped it on the ground. Ashley, recognizing the seal, moved beside Kushina, who cried out, "Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Shield of the Ancients Jutsu." Ashley, watching the blue shield appear, placed her hand on it and pushed some mana and life force into it. Naruto, somehow knowing that Ashley and the others were safe, said, "Behold the might of the Saiyans. Dark Radiance Black Buster Cannon." He then fired from his arms and hands a gigantic ball of pure black ki, that collided with the falling Kisame. An enormous explosion then occurred. Gato, in his hideout, feeling the ground shake, turned his head and gained wide eyes, spotting a huge black mushroom cloud that actually shifted into a roaring ape pounding on its chest. TT Jode, the beast inside of the Saiyans. The mushroom cloud then lifted into the air and a shockwave ripped through the land. This shockwave was felt all the way in Konoha as several windows shattered and some buildings collapsed. Sarutobi, in his office, stopped what he was doing and looked out his window. He gained wide eyes, just barely being able to make out the fading mushroom cloud. Jiraiya, who was in the office with him along with the elders, turned and gasped, spotting the same thing Sarutobi had. Danzo said, "The Jinchuriki." Sarutobi, hearing this, groaned and said, "This is insane." Jiraiya said, "The power he has is impossible." Yugo, who was watching Konohamaru, Moegi, Udon and Tora, turned her head, spotting the fading mushroom cloud. Konohamaru, feeling the boss's power, turned and said, "Boss just finished the Dark Radiance Black Buster Cannon." Yugo, turning to him, asked, "The what?" Konohamaru, looking at the cloud, said, "One of the boss's most powerful attacks. It's literally meant for ending wars or uprisings with a single blast. Hell, knowing boss, he probably put enough power in it to destroy a tailed beast." Udon, nodding, said, "Oni-sama has to show his power and authority as the prince of all Saiyans." Moegi, petting the panting Tora, said, "Oni-sama probably said something totally badass like 'Behold the might of the Saiyans,' or 'This is the fate of all who challenge the Saiyans.'" Tora, looking at the cloud, meowed. Konohamaru, nodding, said, "Tora-chan is right. Knowing boss, he said the first one and said it while his back was turned with his tail slowly wrapping tightly around his waist. Yugo, blinking, asked, "You can understand Torah?" Konohamaru, nodding, said, "We all can. Talking to and understanding animals is one of the first things boss taught us." Yugo, hearing this, asked, "Since you three seem to know so much about Naruto-kun, can you tell me what he finds attractive in a woman?" Konohamaru, blinking several times, said, "She has to be strong." Moegi said, "She needs to give him a prime example of her power." Udon, pushing up his glasses, said, "She needs to be pretty also." Yugo, hearing this, remembered what the kids had said and asked, "What else?" All three kids, shrugging, said, "That's all we know. If you want to know more, ask Ino or Ashley." Yugo, nodding, asked, "Shouldn't you guys get back to training Torah?" Konohamaru, nodding, said, "She's right." Naruto, letting go of the death force flowing through him, felt Excalibur return to her regular blade form. Sheathing her, Naruto ran a hand through his hair and said, "Finally mastered and perfected that damn thing." Ashley, nodding to the gaping Kushina, watched as the shield dropped. Walking over to her father, she asked, "Was that really necessary?" Naruto, chuckling, said, "Of course. The slime surely saw the mushroom cloud and knows that someone or something very powerful is coming for him." Ashley, smirking, said, "Now he's gonna be scared shitless and will try to run." Naruto, nodding, said, "Exactly, and when he does run like the coward he is, we'll be waiting for him." Ashley, laughing, put Kabikirabocho on her shoulder and said, "Look, I have a sword now." Naruto, looking at the Kabikirabocho, turned to spot the Samahata laying on the ground. Using his tail, he wrapped it around the handle and brought it forward. He, grabbing Ashley's other hand and placing the handle of Samahata in it, said, "No, you have two swords now." Ashley, hearing this, blinked and asked, "Why?" He, chuckling, said, "We both know that Excalibur is no ordinary sword, and if I really needed to, I could transform her into about 30 swords, give or take a few. So I want you to be trained to use two swords, so that if one of them is in need of repair or someone disarms you of one, you can use the other." Ashley, hearing this, could understand the logic in what he said. Both Saiyans blinked when Tazuna bowed lowly to them and said, "O great and powerful Lord and Lady Shinjin, I am not worthy." Both Saiyans, quirking an eyebrow, said, "No, you are not, but we will humor you." Tazuna, hearing this, started crying tears of joy. Kushina, shaking her shock away, knew without a doubt that the two had gone easy on her, and Kakashi. Said man was nodding to his decision to be idiot sensei, as what he just saw confirmed that Naruto and Ashley were monsters who wouldn't even hesitate to stamp out his life and probably laugh about it. Sakura was now throwing everything she had ever been told or thought about Naruto and Ashley away, as she had seen their power firsthand, and the two did not like her. They would kill her without even blinking and then say she got in the way. Shivering, she was swearing to never, ever do something so foolish as to get in their way. Sasuke, now jealous beyond belief, marched up to both Saiyans and said, "Dobi, I demand you give me your sword and your power. Only an elite like myself can use them properly." Naruto and Ashley, both giving the boy deadpan looks, said, "Piss off, idiot." Sasuke, snarling, went to grab the two when he was given a double tail slap, sending him crashing into the nearest tree. He was once again knocked unconscious, but this time he had received a concussion and broken jaw from the tails. Naruto, shaking his head, said, "The idiot will never learn." Ashley said, "Stupidity is a disease he cannot get rid of." Naruto, looking at Kakashi, said, "Idiot sensei, carry the idiot Uchiha. We're moving out." Kakashi, nodding, said, "You got it." He then walked over and picked up Sasuke. Ashley, quirking an eyebrow, said, "It seems as idiot sensei has realized his place." Naruto, snorting, said, "About time." He then turned around and walked away, with the rest of the group following him. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.